Hello folks and welcome to our game. Myself James Davison, joined as ever by Michael Verney and brought to you by OurGameRetro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Look at that little beauty that Michael Verney is wearing there from Orga. Look at this. Tipperary, as you know, Tipper back. We won't talk about that straight away though, because you were at Wexford Park over the weekend. You thought you'd been sent to the bogey game, and it turns out to be absolutely incredible. Wexford beaten by Westmeath in the championship for the first time since 1940.
Unbelievable, Shane. Yeah, like it looked like a bogey on the way down. It looked like a bogey at half time. They were beat by 16 points at half time, and you're just thinking, like, there's no way in the world that Westmeath can turn this around. Like, there's literally no hope. This is an unassailable lead. Wexford will win by 20 plus. And it was just the most remarkable turnaround in the history. It's the greatest comeback in the history of the championship by all records that I can find, and by chatting to everybody that knows anything about record taking within the GA and within history. 4 goals in the second half, and you could just see the wheel turning, but it was turning slowly enough starting off. And Wexford butchered a couple of goal chances. Jack O'Connor missed a penalty, really poorly taken penalty. He'd be really disappointed with it. Missed a goal a minute later. Noel Connolly pulled off a save. Then Niall O'Brien gets a goal in the 62nd minute. Then Niall Mitchell comes in, and like literally the bear in the square is back after what I saw in Cusack Park yesterday and after what I saw in Wexford Park yesterday. He comes in, gets 2 absolutely unbelievable goals. And it's no smash and grab or anything like that. They win the second half by 18 points and are deserving winners. Like, it's not, a goal at the last minute, maybe like Derek McNicholas last year to grab a draw, and Wexford didn't have a chance to respond. Wexford had a couple of chances to respond, were unable to do so. Shane, I swear to God now, I'm a bit of a fruit when it comes to hurling. Like, I had to drive up the road about an hour before I started work because I was incapable of working. I was literally like, this. I couldn't believe what I was after seeing. I swear to God, just even chatting to people after. It was the most extraordinary thing I've ever been involved on or been privy to in the GA. It was bonkers.
How many people have that in their job where they're going absolutely, like you are there, you're going absolutely nuts after a game and you can't even work? How many people have that experience in their job?
Yeah, I don't know now, to be honest with you. It's gas. I was sitting beside a referee's assessor, a lovely fella actually from Ross Gray, and I was chatting him throughout, and I hit my own nudge every now and then and said, "Jeez, Westmeath are coming back into this." Then you get a goal, and jeez, like, and they're in it, like, and he was assessing Chris Mooney actually, but he was kind of getting lost in the game as well. It was just mad to see what was happening, and I don't know if you've ever been involved with a team or been involved in the line or even on the pitch when you just cannot stem the tide. You just cannot stop the bleeding. And Wexford were unable to do that yesterday. And they have serious question marks hanging over them now. But I think that needs to be parked for a couple of minutes. And just the achievement that Westmeath pulled off yesterday is absolutely remarkable stuff. They obviously drew with them in Cusack Park last year. But to score 5 points in the first half, all frees from Kieran Doyle, and then to score 4-13 in the second half, the vast majority from play, including the 4 goals. To lose Dar Egerton from between the 55th minute and the 65th minute, be down to 14 men, and to still win the game is just unbelievable, really.
Yeah, you have to give huge credit across the board there. And like Joe Fortune, I mean, what an achievement for him as well. And this is, an ex-Shamrocks man from Ennis going down there, and he would have been hugely motivated. His record against Wexford in the last year and a half is a draw and a win with Westmeath, who obviously, we kind of gave the record. They hadn't won in 83 years there against Wexford. So that's incredible. And also one of his backroom team as well is Rathnur's Richie Flynn. But he said afterwards, I was just really honest with them at half time. I said, we've nothing to lose in the second half. We have families and supporters coming down here. And I just felt we were embarrassing in the first half. I just felt we were too restricted in our play. I put it to them at half time that it was embarrassing. And I said, there are people down here that are paying good money. And do you want to leave a legacy as the best Westmeath team ever? It was the first time in the dressing room that I felt, was I a bit too harsh with them? And did they really believe me? Just go and hurl for the second half and cut these things of systems and shapes and puckouts. We're hurling people, and the more you get caught up in these systems and setups, go and hurl and be a man and get the ball in quick and let our forwards do the job. So, obviously, he was fully fired up at the end of the game. I'm sure the system didn't totally go out the window, but they obviously played brilliant stuff. And on the other side of things, look, Liam Sheedy and Jackie Tyrrell last night on the Sunday game, they basically said, we're talking about the players. And obviously, incredibly awkward situation for Liam Sheedy there because, you're talking about Darragh Egan, one of his former players and backroom team. So he doesn't really want to cut the manager. But a lot of the bucks rest with the manager. And I think we probably have to, let's call a spade a spade. This will be, kind of the end with Darragh Egan and Wexford. It's hard to imagine it won't be.
Yeah, just come back to that in 1 second. Just, I think Joe Fortune said he kind of half intimated that he smashed the tactics board at halftime. He said we might need a new tactics board, so I took that to mean that he might have went through it for a shortcut. They played a sweeper against a breeze that was more significant than I realised when I went down on pitch side. David Glennon played sweeper. They went orthodox right from the off at the start of the second half. They'd 1-4, Shane, within about 3 or 4 minutes. No reply. And Darragh Egan, I could see him getting a bit jittery on the sideline. And he said after that he wasn't even happy at half time, even though there were 16 up. And then, as I said, the wheels started turning. A couple of little decisions maybe went their way. And they produced one of the most amazing things of all time. From a Wexford point of view, I'd say there will be some public outcry. I know Martin Storey had some harsh enough words after they were beaten by Dublin. But, this defeat, blowing a lead, it's not as if they didn't show up. They showed up for a half and then just almost looked like they were going to try to coast to the finish line and just make sure that they were in good shape for Kilkenny next week. And maybe that got into their psyche as well. But there's no excuse from players or management for a defeat like this, really, and to give away such a commanding lead. There was a couple of ones I thought were interesting. Diarmuid O'Keefe came on in the 71st minute. Thought that was strange. I don't know, like if the tide was turning as it was, and everybody could see the tide was turning. Surely you bring him in around the 55th minute or so and just get on a couple of balls or whatever. Particularly they needed protection around the D, because all Westmeath's goals, 2 of them were two breaks around the D. The other 2 were in high balls. Kevin Foley started against Dublin, was one of their better players at times, was a sweeper at different stages as well. He didn't feature at all yesterday. There's going to be an inquiry of all inquiries down in Wexford, because like they go into this weekend with the prospect of, if they don't beat Kilkenny and Antrim beat Westmeath, which there's a fair chance of both of those results happening, that they're down at the Joe McDonagh Cup level. Like, I not been smart. Offaly went down to Joe McDonagh and deservedly went down on the back of a lot of heavy defeats, and we needed to go into transition and rebuild. You wouldn't say Wexford are at that stage or anywhere close. So, and Egan had most of his best players available to him yesterday. So there's going to be a hell of a lot of head scratching going on down there.
One Stop Auto says, lads, the Wexford County Board have to take a lot of blame. Running off the club championship last year in 7 or 8 weeks, finished way before everyone else. Nothing then for a couple of months. That's a good point, interesting point. Conal says, do you think many of the Wexford big players will step away from the panel if they get relegated? Like, here's the thing, right? If they get relegated, they're still going to be playing Division 1 next year. So they're going to have great preparation. And instead of playing a Leinster championship, which everyone says isn't as competitive, they'll play a Joe McDonagh. They'll absolutely smash everybody there, and they'll be in a preliminary All-Ireland quarter-final. So it's not like they won't be in the championship next year.
Oh, yeah, you're finding the silver lining, in fairness to you. But by Jesus, I don't think anyone would be looking at it that way in Wexford, realistically. Like, Shane, you have a team here and a county here that won the Leinster Championship 4 years ago. And you have the prospect of them, like they ran Clare really close in the All-Ireland quarter-final last year. Now you have the prospect that they could be playing Joe McDonagh Cup. We'll chat about it more on Thursday's show, but how do you get a team up that they're literally in their boots at the moment? How does Darragh Egan get them up to produce something next weekend? And it'd be fascinating to see if they can, because this is one of the lowest lows that they've hit.
Yeah, Adrian McGrath says, Darragh Egan has been a huge help to my home club in Scariff, an absolute gent, so it's tough to say that he really should be considering going now. The atmosphere in Wexford Park could be vicious. I'd imagine it would be.
They need to get behind. They need to get behind them, Shane. I will say that. And Leo will tell you this. Wexford were outnumbered probably 5-1, I'd say, in Dr. Cullen Park the other night. So the Wexford faithful definitely need to get behind them now more than ever.
Yeah, Leo, I think we need you to unmute your mic, and then we can get you chatting. Yeah, I think we have you now. So Leo O'Connor, the Offaly under-20 manager. How are things with you, Leo?
Not too bad, Shane. How are you?
Not so bad. Michael, well, I suppose, Joe, we'll talk about the Tipperary and Limerick game with you. What was your thoughts on it? Finished up 25 points apiece. Bit of a cracker.
Absolutely. It was one of those ones. where it took on a life of its own, I suppose, really. I thought Limerick were chasing the game all day yesterday. That was my, when you were looking at it, I just thought there was a little bit of ring rustiness, I thought. Mistakes being made, balls being dropped that normally they stick, and they really rigidly stick to the process. I thought Tip really got into their rhythm very, very early in the game, and they really pushed on a little bit. Limerick were chasing it right up to half time. That 10-minute period, I suppose, after half time, where Limerick really went out and began to express themselves, and you thought they're going to click on from here. That didn't really happen, in that Limerick gave away a very, very soft free, and allowed Tip back into the game. That settled Tip's nerves, and it went on from there. And it was tit for tat, I suppose, from that. Limerick's shot option, I think, when John sits down this morning or last night and analyses the whole situation, Limerick's shot option yesterday, I thought, was rather poor. And yet, when they got one or two chances, which I suppose in the last 6 or 7 minutes, when they could have gone for the juggler and gone for goal chances, they were happy to take points, and they missed one or two chances. Certainly Garrod's one when he went through. I think that was one of the most important. When you look back in it, that was one of the most important incidents in the game, where he probably should have put the ball over the bar. Garrod being Garrod, he went for it. Some days to come off, and not saying he's wrong. Some days to come off, and other days it happens. What happened yesterday, but certainly I think yesterday was one of the ones where you should put the ball over the bar and have kept that scoreboard ticking over for Limerick, particularly when he was after getting into such an open space. There were still two Tipperary players between him and a goalkeeper. And I just think that, small little things like that in games, which are so tight. And if you look at it coming down the home straight, a point lead yesterday coming down the home straight was a big lead.
And like even late on, Graham Mulcahy was brilliant when he came on. He had a chance to slip in Peter Casey for a goal.
Yeah, that's I don't want to be referring to, but that was one opportunity where Graham just stepped back inside. Casey was inside. If you look at it, Casey puts his hands up in his head, but Graham's influence on the game yesterday, he came on against Clare, didn't have a great influence in the game against Clare, but certainly when he came on yesterday, I think his experience and his wisdom and his know how to get into positions, I think, was very, very important for a Limerick attack yesterday.
Do you know what? Like, the big thing for me in the last number of games has been the third quarter rush, where Limerick have just steamrolled Tipperary. So there was like the 16-point turnaround in the 2021 game. It was like 110 to 2-point rush there in the league semi-final recently. Like when I went back over the stats that I was doing for this match, there was a period between the 40th and 55th minute where Limerick had 11 scoring chances and got just 1 point from it. So Tipperary, like, there was still that third quarter rush, but Tipperary found a way to keep with them, because they forced them into there was 3 block shots, there was 2 balls that were dropped short, so that's generally under pressure, 5 wides. So I think Tipperary found a way. Plus Tipperary won that period 4 points to 1, Michael. So that was I think that was key to Limerick not continuing the same pattern.
Yeah, well, it looked like the game had turned completely a couple of minutes after the break. What were we in? We were 39 minutes in, and Limerick they went in 3 down. They were 1 up, and you're just thinking they'll tag on. And Tip managed to get back into it. Just you mentioned there, I've never seen as many blocks in a game, lads. In a modern game, the amount of blocking Tip got in. There must have been 6 or 7. Really, Leo, I'm sure you're always kind of coaching as well. There was always an active hurl. There was always a hurl somewhere between, the ball and the goals. There was a brilliant one. Even Barry Nash got hooked in the first half, going for a shot. He got blocked as well. Noel McGrath, I think, got the block on him. They were just phenomenal like that. The pressure that they were putting on, as you said there, Shane, they were putting pressure on the shots. There was no easy shots, apart from maybe Garrod's, chance there. I don't even know if he was going for a goal or whether he mishit it or not. But you said about scoring chance there. After 64 minutes, Tip had converted 21 of 29, whereas Limerick had converted 21 of 39. And Leo, as you said there, when they look back at that, their scoring efficiency just isn't where they'd like it to be.
I just think, Michael, I don't think Limerick are where they want to be either. On a broader scale of the whole situation, I don't think they are where they really have flowed this year in Championship. certainly National Hurling League looked absolutely superb in the National Hurling League. A lot of things went right from, but it hasn't, that flow. Limerick normally timed the season right, and it really hasn't stepped up this year. Personally, myself, I think there's a lot of miles on the clock, even though they're still a young bunch of players. If you look at the amount of hurling over the last 5 years that they've played, compared to other counties, Limerick might have played 23, 24, 25 games over the last 6 years. But that's due to the success that they've had. But I just think that game time, that amount of mental tiredness that's there at the moment, that I would put it down to. I think physically they're fine. I thought yesterday they finished the game really, really well. I thought Tip, even though Tip have much improved this year and are a different team, to be quite honest, I think the introduction of new players, the Brian O'Mara's, the Garrod O'Connors of this world, they've brought a new lease of life to a Tip team that were from wanting last year, to be quite honest. And in terms of that, I just think that Limerick's, even though, like as I said, that energy that Tip had brought, I thought that Limerick were that little bit fitter yesterday, coming down the home straight. It looked like, Tip went a point ahead, but yet Limerick had the ability to come back and still go a point ahead. It was Tip was drawing the game. And I think that energy and that bit of experience, and I thought that threat that Limerick played with in the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game yesterday, I think there was a sudden realization that, oh God, if this goes wrong, if we're caught here, we're in big trouble, and I think that's what really got Limerick over the line. And I think that energy kicked in. I thought Kyle Hayes was absolutely superb yesterday in the second half, but yet didn't go on one of those marauding runs up the field. I just think that, I think in the past, in the national 2 years in particular, Limerick have thrown caution to the wind. If you look at the All-Ireland against Cork, if you look at Kilkenny last year, like if you look at the Tip match situation, where they really threw the shackles off themselves and said, look, this is it, we're going for it. And I don't think that has happened this year. It's going to be a very, very I think next weekend's game against Cork, I think, is going to be one for the ages, because I think Cork's youth and enthusiasm, what they're bringing to it, and what Limerick are going to have to, in front of their own home support, oh my God, it's going to be some occasion. And I just think I think the last 4 or 5 minutes yesterday, the realization that this could go belly up for us, I think is going to have a major effect on the Limerick team going into next weekend.
There was some great matchups, wasn't there, Leo? Like Alan Tynan was obviously detailed on Kyle Hayes, and he emptied himself, and I'm sure he did the job that Cahill was asking, even though he didn't. I can't even remember him having the ball in his hand.
No, I don't remember that either. No.
Yeah, but he's still important for Tip, but it was very different to his Cork performance. Michael Breen on Gillane, I thought was good. Like Gillane probably wasn't fed enough, but I thought Breen did well. When the opportunity was there to hold him up or whatever, there's times you just have to accept he's going to score a point. Jake Morris, I thought, gave an exhibition for Tip. Like Keane Lynch and Grode Hegarty, can they change mid-flow and get back to their old hurler of the year selves? But back to the matchups, Leo, was there any matchups that really kind of got you going?
I'll be honest with you, just after referring when I thought Michael Breen and Aaron Gillane was very interesting matchup. There was the first ball that went in yesterday, if you look at it, it was played diagonally across the field. It was perfect for Aaron to come out onto turned and pop the ball over the bar. Maybe, as you said, the ball wasn't fed that way yesterday, but I think that was due to further out the field. I think that was the tip, that middle third of the field that everyone begins to talk about now. I think that space, that hooking, that blocking that we've earlier referred to, there was hurleys in everywhere, and it was just the whole pace and the intensity thing. I in the past I have seen Tip, but of this current team, I haven't seen Tip play with an intensity that they played with against Limerick yesterday. I thought technically the hooking, the blocking, their work rate, it was absolutely superb yesterday, and that's something that was missing last year out of Tip, and they've reintroduced it this year. Seamus Kennedy, these guys, they all stood up yesterday. And as I said, the Alan Tynan situation, Alan looked an absolutely brilliant hurler. I remember Alan in 2015, the minor final, playing centre forward for Tip, and he was a different type hurler completely to the hurler I saw yesterday. Almost Tip mirror imaged Alan yesterday for what David Fitzgerald did to Kyle as well. And that David Fitzgerald held up Kyle outside in the Gaelic grounds against Clare, and literally Alan sacrificed himself yesterday and stopped Garrod, because I think Limerick also looked at the threat that Allantine had clipped over 3 or 4 points against Cork. And, that's something that was a threat that they knew Kyle had to do a job as well. But as I said, I just don't think that Limerick have thrown the shackles off themselves this year. The matchups overall, one of the things that for me was when I saw in the second half, and it was very early second half, I just saw when Noel went in centre forward and Declan Hannon, two very, very similar type players. And I went, oh my God, this is going to be interesting. But it never really developed because, as we say already, the middle third, I would always watch Noel McGrath because Noel he's telepathic. He can find that space. Like Peter, he's a Peter Casey type player. They're all the same type players where they find the space and they always seem to have that extra second. You don't put them down as being the quickest guys in the world, but yet they work their way into a space where they always have that 3 or 4 yards and they seem to have loads of time to pop the ball over the bar.
Dan McCormack, Shane, on Garage yesterday was brilliant for me. And I really loved what Limerick did, and it didn't work out. But they put Garode Hegarty into the full forward line and tried to make it really awkward for Dan McCormack, who's never played anywhere near the full back line in his whole career, I'd say. And he still was brilliant, and he was still charging out with balls. That was one, I think, I have to say, like, Cattle really went after certain matchups, and you'd have to say he got it spot on. I think this was a game where Tipperary probably came of age, to be honest with you. And the fact that they were the ones, they'd had the lead for the vast majority of the game. They were the ones that came back and forced the draw rather than the other way around. And you look at like Conor Stakelum, another lad who just emptied himself, was carried off. There was some amount of new personnel. Johnny Ryan came in near the end. Sean Ryan came in. John McGrath was on the field 90 seconds and had to hit the draw, like leveling free, debatable enough free now in my view. As John Kiley said after, if you're a point up, you don't get those frees, but when you're a point down, maybe you're more likely to get them. But just to do that, even only been 90 seconds on the pitch, like if you look at all the personnel that Tip are missing since last year, and you look at the performance that they produced yesterday, I'd have to say, from your own point of view and from a Tip point of view, you'd have to say it's hugely heartening. They got some amount right yesterday. And one player we haven't mentioned is Rhys Shelley, who was just dictating affairs from the goals.
Yeah, like I read into Redzer O'Grady beforehand, and he was saying before the match, and he was saying he's a player that's really confident in himself. He could do anything, but very confident player. And you can see the way he played. He really commanded the square, I felt. I just wonder though, with Limerick, first of all, Tipperary are missing players like Jason Ford, Barry Heffernan, Craig Horgan, Paddy Cadell, and Jared Brown. If you threw them all in, maybe there's someone else missing that would be huge in terms of like if you could get 1 or 2 of them back, even next year. Maybe it won't happen this year. But I was going to say, Leo, that Cathal O'Neill, his performance is absolutely outstanding. Like we've all known he's a great talent, but this was possibly the day where he truly announced himself as a senior star.
Absolutely. Before you go talk about Cathal O'Neill, Shane, I turn around and say something to you. Shawnee Ryan Rogers, right, Temple Derry, right, came on yesterday. My thinking yesterday on the situation with Shawnee Ryan was, if Shawnee had come on earlier in the game, because he sits really deep inside in the full forward line and he's a goal scorer, it would have forced Limerick back up the field that little bit further. And Limerick would have had to come back and had to tie down 3 across the back, 3 across that full back line. And I just thought yesterday, I was thinking, like, if you were Liam Cahill, what would you do? And it was just one of the things that came into my head. And I know, like, I've seen him playing hurling with Temple Derry there. And, like, he really sits deep inside in the full forward line around that 14-yard line. And if you had brought him in, you'd been pushing Limerick back towards their own goals and creating further space for like, Conor Stakelum absolutely emptied the tank, But it was just interesting. The Cathal O'Neill situation. Look, Cathal has been a talent. I worked with Cathal when he was 16 years of age. He's just one of those guys that lives, sleeps, eats, drinks hurling. He's probably one of his own biggest critics, in that he measures everything. He look at all his stats, and he's just a good kid. He went out yesterday, hurled with a little bit of abandonment, got on a lot of ball over around that 65-yard line, and that's what he did, was those 4 or 5 points yesterday. That's his ability, At times, he can be conceived as being a little bit lazy, but he's up that. He literally has served his apprenticeship over the last 2 years with Limerick, and he has really learned, like, have a situation where there's a lot of competition. Like Keane isn't setting the world on fire at the moment, and that's something that Keane will go in and examine himself. Garrod, I just think, all the rumours going around all week about him, I think that mentally affected him yesterday. And I think Garrod is more disappointed in himself than anyone else, that he has it has got to this situation. He kind of knows he's gone through a bad run of form. And I think this is the first time in Garrod's career that he's lacking a little bit of drive, and he's trying to work out the initiatives himself, what he's to do to get back up. And I think he's probably been overcritical of himself. But like when you have a person then like Cahill, which he does, Cahill works hard. His first touch is very, very good. Pace wise, he's up to the level. Not the most. He's not going to set the world on fire. He's not going to be your 100-meter champion. But it's his work rate, and he gets onto the ball and does what I call those diagonal runs that he's making across the middle of the field. Like he's coming short and he can take it off Declan, and he's popping the ball over the bar off Declan. Maybe further down the line you could find him midfield. I think for a Limerick seniority, maybe next year or the year after. Because certainly, as things go on, when they'll need to change it up, there's as I said, there's a lot of miles on the clock already. But he's just been a superb talent.
It would take a brave man to leave Hegarty and Keane Lynch on the bench. Like they're both brilliant players. Like, and when they're on form, there's few as good as them, but they're not playing well. Peter Casey, it's surprising to ever see him on the bench. Do you think John Kiley will go and just maybe use the two of them as substitutes, Lee, or would it take a very brave man?
I'm going to say something, Shane. I won't be the most popular guy in the world for saying this. I think last year, with Keane being out injured last year, when you're out injured off the pace of an intercounty hurler, you and Keane worked through the whole thing through. I think Keane got a little bit muscle bound. I think he's put up a few pounds, and it's not in terms of weight; it's in terms of strength. I think he's put up a little bit too much muscle, right? And I think he's lost that half yard of pace this year. That dynamic runs that he was running always seemed to be able to get away from the man. And I think that is one of the things that they're going to have to look at with Keane. I think maybe less would be more at this time of the year for him at the moment, in terms of, it just doesn't seem to be sticking. That magical touch, those, all those flicks and stuff that created space for him. I don't think that has happened. And I just think that being out of the game literally for 12 months, as he was last year with that injury, bar playing the first or second round last year when he tore the hamstring badly. So from that point of view, I just think that that's one of the things that Limerick are going to have to look at. I think the freshness is not there with Keane and Garrod at the moment. And I know John being John, I think John will make those hard decisions. And I think that it's not something that they'll shy away from. But certainly it'll all go down to training, recuperation today and tomorrow. Probably go at it again, maybe tomorrow night, and then take it from there and see where the lie of the land is, because they can shake it up. There's a lad there, I think a lot of that's on the Limerick panel is Aidan O'Connor. I think Aidan will offer Limerick a lot in the future. Maybe is it now the time to throw him in there? I think his work rate needs to be up a little bit, but certainly they have options. The Cahill O'Neill factor, as we mentioned already, is another thing. They have the reliance on Cahill now that he can come in. And like just look, 6 to 1, half a dozen dollars. Shane.
Do you think, Leo, that Keane has ran 100? Like, I don't see him running at 100%. I don't see him taking on a man. If you get me now, he kind of sitting back or he's jinking. Like he got blocked down yesterday, standing up hitting a shot, which you'd never see.
He took his point that time when there was space to turn and go and make something happen, which he normally would. Yeah,
it was just it just doesn't look himself. I don't know if I've seen him like running at 100%, making a 65-yard dash, or do you know what I mean? He just looks like his maybe his agility or his speed has been kind of stifled a small bit.
Yeah, as the dynamic of a centre forward, I think it's so from that point of view, I just think the dynamic has been maybe Michael and I. Maybe it's a time to drop him back midfield again. That is one of the things that if he goes back midfield, I think that the energy and that consistency that he brings out around the middle of the park, because he lays off a great ball. he has that natural ability to pick out a man, and he has that natural ability to go back and help out in front of Declan as well. So that point of view, I just think it may be something that you might see next weekend. You've Garrod as well. Like Garrod is, I think for me, it's a mental thing. Because the rumor mill that went around last week. It's the GA. We can't stop these things. These things are always said, and people are not invincible. And I think it got to him a little bit yesterday. And overall, I think the Limerick half forward line yesterday will be disappointed, other than the bright spark that was Cathal O'Neill. If you look back at the All Ireland final last year, the scores that came from that half forward line. If you look back from the Cork All Ireland final, the scores that came from that half forward line, scores that came out of it yesterday were very, very limited. It was Cathal O'Neill, and that's one of the major factors.
I'm just going to bring up the Munster table here for a second, and if you look at Limerick, total points scored 72. Obviously, Waterford are languishing behind everyone else at the moment, but 72. When you look at, albeit Clare have played their 4 games, 115, Tipperary 93, 85. Like, they are struggling, Michael. Like, are you this week? If you're Kinnerk and Kiley, are you worried?
Oh, you definitely would be a little bit worried anyway, wouldn't you? Like, John Kiley's kind of saying after yesterday that they're incrementally improving. They probably were a bit better yesterday, maybe, than they had been in the previous 2 games. But like, compared to their previous standards, it's still probably well off. And just looking at that table as well, like, a draw will do Cork as well next Sunday because they have better score difference. So, like, Leo teed it up there. Like, Jesus, Sunday is going to be an absolute cracker. Like, Cork have the chance again. Limerick have, much like Tip, as I said, coming into the game yesterday. Limerick have inflicted a fair bit of misery on Cork. Only 2 years ago, they gave them an absolute battering in an All-Ireland final. Here's a glorious chance to right all those wrongs and knock them out of the championship. But the Limerick kind of have that sense of, and I said it to you on Thursday's show, that veteran boxer that is kind of leaning back on the ropes and is under a bit of pressure. There could be still a few big punches left in him, but definitely maybe looks like he's kind of nearly waiting for somebody to take him out of his misery. Now, that might not be the case, and they could get a victory over Cork, and they could go on a run through the preliminary quarter-final and into the All-Ireland quarter-finals, but they're going to have to go over Sunday first, and that is anything but a given.
Yeah, Tom Morrissey then, let's talk about some of the positives for Limerick. Tom Morrissey, Diarmuid Burns, in the second half did some really good things. Dan Morrissey, like, there are some players that really stood up, Leo.
They are, absolutely, Shane. And look, it's not a case that Limerick are shying away from anything. I think the half-back line yesterday, definitely Sean Finn was a major loss to Limerick yesterday inside that cornerback. That astuteness, that confidence that he brings back there. And Mike Casey had a good game yesterday in terms that he was very, very consistent. But this might sound being arrogant, but when you're throwing a ball out as a short puck out to Shawnee Finn, rigidly where he wants to go. That he has 2 or 3 options. He has this in his head. I think it was new yesterday to Mike Casey playing cornerback, and I think the movement to the tip full forward line yesterday was very, very impressive as well. And I think that over the last number of years, if you look, the influence of Jake Morris had against the Limerick team. I think below Park Keefe 2 years ago, he got a goal, but I think he's been literally nullified by Limerick full back line in the past. And I think his influence yesterday, he found space yesterday that normally would be closed down by Sean Finn. And that's one of the things. The positives, though, is that the whole half back line, Diarmuid Burns, Declan, Kyle Hayes yesterday, when it was really in the melting pot, all 3 stood up to the mark, all around the middle of the field. Like, as you said, Tom Morrissey has been, to me, Mr. Consistent for Limerick. When he gets on the ball that this guy is creating space. Everyone says it doesn't look the fastest guy in the world. I'd love to see his GPS reports because absolutely, I'd say they're off the Richter scale. They must be up around the 12K mark, to be quite honest, because he's just constantly working, but he has that natural hurling ability as well, where anything within 70, 80 yards of goals, when he turns, he's going for it, and he'll just get that yard of space and pops the ball over the bar. I think there's been yesterday, and I think there's been an over-reliance on Tom a little bit, even against Clare as well. I think, and that's one of the things that when John sits down in the coal light today and looks at this, like this year, normally Limerick are coasting and deciding, do we play a Munster final? For the last 2 years, we'll qualify for the Munster final, we'll go the direct route. Now it's down to Limerick getting into preliminary quarter-final. This is new to Limerick. And as I said, it's from here on in from, it's completely knockout hurling now. It's a different lie of the land. Normally we're qualified at this stage of the year and we're looking to know which route we're going to take. And like you can look at all the positives of it, and I just think next weekend match is just going to be gone. It's off the Richter scale. It's going to be mental, all right. And it's Cork are coming up with a freshness, with a bone, with a paw, with a thorn stuck in their paw. Going, you're not going to do this again. You're not going to do this again. Pat Ryan, it's his first time facing Limerick in Championship. Like, there's so many pluses here for Cork. And I turn around and say this much, before it ever even happens, the Cork bench next week, next Sunday, is going to be huge, right? What they're bringing to it. And, like, we can look at our positives, we can look at our consistencies with Limerick, but ultimately is really going to boil down to work rate, who wants it, and as you said, are we on the ropes? Are we going to throw the final punch that will get us out of trouble? It really is in the melting pot. It's something it's going to be a unique occasion. And like, I know we can talk about yesterday was brilliant, 38,000. Like, we've had them in the past. My God, Limerick are on the ropes next weekend against Cork, and Cork are chomping at the bit. Went down to Ennis and got a really good result. In terms of they put up a performance, just pipped where they gone. They were the 4 points, 5 points down at one stage. Yeah, and still came out of it, and like, I know they were pipped, but it was down to one or tiredness more than anything else, emptying the tank. And Cork, even though they were beaten, are probably in a very, very strong position coming to Limerick with nothing to lose, everything to gain.
Can I just ask you, Leo, hypothetically, and I know it's a hypothetical, just say Limerick get over next weekend, like, is that preliminary quarter-final, All-Ireland quarter-final, All-Ireland semi-final, All-Ireland final, like, is that a route that they can actually negotiate this year, just given some of the injuries, given that the fatigue of that, a lot of their bigger players? It's not like 2018 where they're the young, fresh team coming in the back door. Like, if they do get through, that like, there's pitfalls everywhere. More games, more injuries, more fatigue, less freshness.
Like, the result in Wexford yesterday with a preliminary quarter-final, like, Limerick can only take Limerick can only take their foot off their gas and maybe rest one or two players in a preliminary quarter-final. They'll probably get over that, right? If they get the result, they'll probably get over that. And then what I would term, where in the past they've really come into their own, be it semi-finals, quarter-finals, semi-finals and finals. Limerick, when they seem to get to Croke Park, get an extra 20% out of themselves. They've got to get that extra 20%, in my opinion, 2 matches earlier this year.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's going, and as I initially referred at the very start of this, is that Limerick have an awful lot of hurling played over the last 5 years, since 2018, and I think that has been the major negative for Limerick. The miles on the clock, going to the well, and like, okay, this should be going for probably, bar the Kilkenny game, should be probably this year looking at 5 in a row. But in terms of everything, that miles on the clock, I just think that is the most important thing that Caroline Currid, Paul Kenner, John Kiley have got to get over. I think that they have to really work on that and say, we have the ability, we have the mental toughness, and more importantly, we have the aerobic fitness to go here. We go to the well again. We go in, like, we refer to them as boxing matches. You go in, they're going to another boxing match next Sunday, and it's do or die from. It's Championship hurling so early in the year for Limerick. I mean, like, it's not even May, not even in June yet, and Limerick are, they have to get in a performance.
And like, there was a commenter there saying that, look, we're talking about it as if it's all negative Limerick and all positive Tip. Tipperary did have to get a leveler at the end of the game, and it's not like, you're thinking that Tip will go on and win the All-Ireland now just because they drew with Limerick. But, like, I have to say, I love that Liam Cahill, he made his 4 changes, and that was it. Like, he's going to change the goalie. It worked out. He brought in Owen Connolly. I thought he did pretty well on Tom Morrissey, as good as you can do really against him. Obviously, the Mark Keogh change had to happen because Jason Ford was injured, but Keogh was brilliant again, I felt. And then the other change was, I can't remember what the other change was.
Bonner Matter came in, yeah, and they got 50 good minutes out of him.
Yeah, and especially because he'd had a tough league semi-final, I thought he did really well. And like Barry Nash is normally raiding up the field and, you know, impacting the game going the other way, Leo. The one time he got up the field, this time he got hooked. So negating him, someone who's become so in vogue in terms of like, you nearly want to be the Barry Nash role now. But Tip found a way to shut that down.
They did, but one of the most interesting things I think that with Tip this year, Shane, is the fact that Brian O'Mara at centre back is a holding centre back. Tip haven't had a holding centre back since Conor O'Mahony left them, right? Retired a couple of years ago. You know, that's steady influence. I see the benefits of that, you know, where like Barry Nash there wasn't the space to come up the middle yesterday. And Barry, and plus the fact that I think teams are really pushing up with, say, on Limerick, playing 2 and 3 inside in the full forward line. You know, even Limerick's puck out strategies, Limerick didn't go short too many times yesterday. They weren't allowed to go short too many times because Tip were close enough to get there, you know, to the short puck out if it happened. And Declan even, like Limerick teams over the last number of years, like how many times have we seen Declan coming into that little pocket between the 13-14 channel and come and take puck outs there, you know? And Limerick have a puck out strategy as well where they go 4 across the 21-yard line, right? I think I saw it twice yesterday where Diarmaid Burns can come in and take, you know, when Sean Finn would go right out to the sideline, Diarmaid Burns could come in and take the puck out there. That didn't happen. You know, so it's a credit to Tip that they shut down that type of stuff. You know, when they did put the 3-man full forward line decider on the Limerick puck out, it forced Nicky to go long. You know, so there was loads of things. There was loads of tactical situations where Tip got right yesterday, and you've got to give Shane or Liam Cahill the credit for that, Shane.
Michael, do you think there's a lot of talk afterwards that, you know, Cahill Barrett being combative, and, you know, he had a great battle with Seamus Flanagan as well. I didn't think he did a whole pile wrong, I have to say, but there's some people saying that he went and pulled the face guard under a high ball. Now, he definitely did connect with the face guard. Whether it's a red card, I don't think so, but because it didn't seem intentional to me. It's just one of those things, you're holding your man off and he pulls the face guard.
Yeah, I only got to watch it back this morning just before the show, and I'm glad kind of was watching it by myself in quiet, and you're just looking at it and you're not listening to any hoo-ha or anything like that. I didn't see a huge amount in it, being honest with you. I thought he had his hand up around here and might have came down, but I don't think he was necessarily pulling his face guard. I don't know, that's the type of player Barrett is. He plays right on that edge. You could say Limerick play right on that edge as well. Like, Cahill Barrett was probably concussed coming off yesterday and couldn't wait to get back on the pitch. And just something on that as well, I said it to you off air, I thought it was kind of funny in the Shemazel after. I don't know what happened after, but that Cahill Barrett and Aaron Gillan, 2 of the most combative players in the game, were 2 players going in trying to stop the row, which is not something you'd normally see. But I thought Barrett was brilliant while he was on the pitch. I thought it was strange that Flanagan was taken off nearly immediately after Barrett went off, because like he surely would have got a bit more space without Barrett in his togs, basically. So I thought that was interesting as well. I probably would have left him on another couple of minutes just to see whether he could make an impact without Barrett hanging over him.
What did you make of that, Leo?
Just generally though, Shane, just one thing that you can talk about. I just think that the referee yesterday had a good game. In fairness to Sean, I thought he did a very, very good game. I don't think any of the lads yesterday, I just thought both teams went out and really wanted to hurl. I don't think there was any nastiness. I think certainly like Cahill Barrett's situation, I think where Cahill, it was head to shoulder rather than shoulder to head yesterday. And Cahill was putting down the head, trying to get out. And it hopped off at Tom Morrissey. I think Tom Morrissey's shoulder. I don't think there was any malice in it. I think he probably will have suffered a little bit of concussion and certainly looked like it. But it's just the whole situation. I just think that like when you were a referee not noticeable on the field, which he wasn't yesterday, right? Okay, referees, they're doing a job too. Players get it wrong in the field too. Referees are always going to get 1 or 2 calls. But I just thought the referee did a very, very good job in it yesterday. Overall, the consistency, the whole thing. And this is what, getting back to the point then, I don't think any player goes out and does something maliciously, right? I just think that they know there's too much at stake, for players to be picking up yellow cards, red cards. I don't think that happens. I just think that the way the game is being refereed now, I think there's a lot of rules and regulations and a lot of directives coming to these referees meetings. And I think the referees have literally, if they're not refereeing the game to the directives they're getting down from Croke Park, I don't think they're getting the big games. So there's a certain pressure on referees as well to referee the game a certain way. There isn't. It's the intensity. It's the combat of it. The tackles, the hits, and the GA has gone to a certain level in a different way, Michael. And it's just the players are training. They're literally professionals. Like we're above and obviously we're trying to get these guys bigger and stronger so that when they step up to senior level, that they're able to play at that level. And it's certainly one of those situations where both teams, very, very strong, big, strong physical teams, the tackles are going in. There's no, as I said, there's no malice attached to it. It's just the situations, because the speed of the game is gone to, that these things are happening. And like Kyle Barrett, I don't think for 1 minute yesterday, right? You're underneath a high ball. There's a fella backing in you. And did he do? He might have touched the face guard. Did he do it designedly? No, not in any circumstances. I just think that it's one of the situations where hurling is unique in that when you get into one guy's reversing in, another guy's trying to hold his ground. He's trying to grapple. He doesn't want the ball to go behind him because he knows the threat of your man spinning him. And it's just a case of break the ball back out in front, and I'll try and get out. And I think yesterday was the perfect example of it. One flick coming back, another flick going forward, and he's trying to hold his space, puts his hands up, trying to block a ball out, and it makes contact with a face guard. Not for 1 minute was that a red card yesterday. And I just think people got to realise this, and I think it actually happens in half a second or a second, and it is the nature of the game that we're playing.
I thought Sean Stack had a good game because I was looking at the commentary yesterday evening and I think hearing a lot of tip people going mad. Now there was Richie English definitely hit that ball off his knee, and I think Cattle lost the rag over that. It clearly went out off his knee for a sideline ball, but it probably levelled off with that last free. I actually thought Sean Stack had a good game, and I didn't think he was that visible either, I have to say as well. But I think it's kind of unique to watch the game back a couple hours after, because you see everything that's out there, and then you kind of can make up your own mind. And even though my mind would have been clouded with various things that you're seeing, I actually thought he had a good game, and I didn't think Barrett deserved a red either, despite what some people are saying.
Since we're mentioning referees, can I mention that I thought it was very strange that Johnny Murphy's, obviously who's a Limerick man, is refereeing a game that has so much consequence to Limerick just before. And so Cork-Clare, if Cork win that game, obviously Limerick can be knocked out of the championship a couple of hours later. And any time he made any decision, there was one or two that I felt really went against Cork. I just think it was strange to put Johnny in that situation. And I'm not saying he did anything untoward, but it's just not a good idea, not a good look, because people put 2 and 2 together straight away.
Yeah, just on that, it's a bit like Sean Clear refereeing the 2019 All-Ireland semi-final where Kilkenny were already in the final. That's a bit strange as well. And just on Johnny Murphy, I think Johnny Murphy is probably the most improved referee in the country. I think he referees games completely differently now than he did a couple of years ago. But I'll just throw it over to you, Leo. That is an awkward spot to put him in.
Yeah, without shadow of a doubt. But I just think that, as you said, I think Johnny Murphy is probably one of the top referees now in the GAA. I think other than the fact that Limerick have been in so many All-Irelands in the last 5 years, I think Johnny would have refereed in All-Ireland at this stage, and well deserved so. I just think that the guy he's refereeing to the letter of the law, which is what he's told to do. And I think he having played the game himself, I think that's a major advantage. I think heavily involved with his own club and stuff like that. But that's Johnny, and it's an awkward situation, no doubt about that. But one of the things that, are there, we all know referees. Look, I came from my father refereed 3 All-Irelands. And I certainly know what it's like back in the 70s. And I remember as a young child, you'd be going, oh God, you'd hear all these things. There's so much, the media, there's so much coverage of these games. There's so much known about everyone now that it has taken on a life of its own. But it's one of the situations where I don't blame Johnny Murphy. I blame the people that are appointing these. I'm not pointing the finger at them in it, because ultimately they want the top quality referees refereeing these games, and this is what happens, and hence we're in a situation where we're talking about whether it was right or wrong to have Johnny Murphy in the game. Look, in the perfect scenario, no. But in this situation, Johnny, I thought I watched that as well yesterday. I thought Johnny did a very, very good game. Even though difficult situations, and Ennis being Ennis, the crowd are in top, 18,000 baying for your blood. The man are thinking, we're getting to almost the final, and it certainly takes on a life of its own. And this is what brings the debates. This is what brings the conversations, and it's such is life. But yeah, in the perfect scenario, I think it should be looked at, the consequences for referees refereeing these games further down the line, because it's certainly something that ultimately needs to be sorted out.
Yeah, Adrian McGrath saying, name the specific decisions that went against Cork, Shane. Well, there was definitely one where Tim O'Mahony, I thought there shouldn't have been a free against him late on. There was a very questionable Ger Millerick against Kelly moment as well. There was a couple more. I had no skin in the game for either team, really, but I did think a couple of times.
You had no skin in the game, Shane. You hate them both.
Yeah, I want them both to lose if they can at all. Were we impressed? Were you impressed by Clare overall? Obviously, you kind of mentioned earlier there was only a puck of a ball in it. Diarmuid Ryan, of course, getting the winner at the end. But have you been impressed with Clare overall, Leo?
Absolutely. I just think that Clare have really pushed on from last year. Clare left so much energy in the 2 Limerick matches last year. And literally when they got to Croke Park against Kilkenny, they were very, very flat. Their ability this year to maintain the pace over the 70 minutes, their fitness levels, absolutely superb. Their hurling has really improved. They have a game plan. They've got a lot more out of, Tony Kelly is still their marquee player, and he has the ability to win matches on his own. But he's really as well. There was 2 or 3 balls yesterday came down in what they call the shed, with the open stand over on the far side of the field in Ennis. There was 1 or 2 balls yesterday where Tony came down the sideline yesterday. Last year or the year before, Tony would have been going for it and trying to bang those balls over the bar. Yesterday, they went diagonally across the field and working players into it. When you look at it, he's mixing and matching it. He's balanced. Brian's balance is good. Cian Galvin, or Conor Galvin. I can't think of which.
Ian Galvin.
Ian yesterday, he started against Limerick, brought on as a sub yesterday. So he's keeping the energy within the thing, and he's keeping the players guessing, even though he's getting a lot out of them, whether as I said, whether he brings on Ian or starts him. Ger Rogers this year, new lease of life. You've Shane Meehan. There was a lot more pressure on Shane Meehan 12 months ago because he was the next big thing to come out of Clare, but yet he's constantly bringing him on as a sub when the game opens up. And that's one of the benefits that Clare have. They really have strengthened their panel as well, and they're hurling more freely. Last year, it was still a little bit of very drop back behind the ball, almost have 2 sweepers at various stages. They were almost protecting Conor Cleary. Certainly, it's one of the things that, and remind me to bring up an interesting point about the way the 2 matches were refereed yesterday. But it certainly was an interesting point where they're all seem to be hurling that a little bit more freely. And it's something that I think is benefiting Clare. I think the shackles are off them a little bit more. Last year, I think they were too rigid, in that they all knew their job. And I certainly think they're beginning to express themselves with their hurling ability, because Clare have as good as hurlers as anyone in this country. But bring up my point. Johnny Murphy yesterday gave Conor Cleary a warning for pulling and dragging off the ball, right? And this is talk about the way the game's refereed, right? And he the second time he went in and booked him, all right? You had Diarmuid, Garrod Hegarty, and I'm almost certain was it
Dan McCormick, they were rolling around, weren't they? Yeah,
rolling around the ground, right? And the game was still going on around them. So you talk about games being refereed one way and games refereed another way, where Johnny went in, pulled Conor Cleary for pulling and dragging, and the stuff going on off the ball, the jersey pulling. And next thing, you have 2 guys running around the ground, trying to no one throwing digs, but literally a wrestling match. And the game was going on around them, and let it go. And
We
Sean
love it though,
Sackley,
don't we? We love it.
this is it, like, this is it. Like, there's almost we're all on stage, but there's a sideshow going on here, and we're all pulling and dragging, and the crowd are roaring there for that, and one craft are roaring at that, and the other craft are looking, going, "Oh, Jesus, that's brilliant!" But like, it was just so funny how things happen in the way hurling is refereed and the way the game is played. And as I said briefly back, no one's going out to do anyone. We're all going out trying to gain that extra inch that will get us over the line. And it was just so funny yesterday at one stage. And when you compare the two games.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, Leo, you've been unbelievably good with your time, so we won't keep you much longer. We probably go into the Cork and Clare game a little bit more now, but just a quick one on last Wednesday night with Offaly. Obviously unbelievable. I was on the pitch after. I said to you when I texted you last night, I didn't get near you on the pitch. I couldn't find you, but it was an unbelievable occasion and an unbelievable buzz going into the final now.
Absolutely. Look, I let it to you last Wednesday night. I said, I better get in here. Someone needs to keep a cool head and try and get a dressing room organised here and try and get recovery organised here. And as they come in off the field, get them in and get them showered. But anyway, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. One of the most noticeable things, though, and I turn around and say this to you, Michael, most positive thing that I can take out of Offaly is, number one, the players' attitudes. Those players. I remember I came in. I was up there 2-19, and I went to a Limerick and Offaly on the 14 hurling match in Limerick. Right, the Offaly brought down two teams to play Limerick, and that was my first time experiencing the current, we'll say last year's minor team. I saw Screeney then that day, right? And you look, and their sheer attitude, the way they've bought in, and like as I said, the 2020 team to me is as important. The 2020 minor team that the COVID team, as we call them, went on to 2021. There have been the most important thing that, that experience, that strength, that physical ability, and yet very, very good hurlers. And when you have a guy like Cormac Egan, when he finished playing under 20 football this year, that I was able to bring back in, there's a lot of small factors that people don't realise. But the more biggest thing, Michael, and I pass compliment here, is the Offaly County Board. Duignan, Derval, Colin Cummins, the whole county board, Karina Carroll, from a point of view that they really have stepped up to the mark. They've done everything that I've requested of them. I've asked them certain things. And it's been a positive, very, very positive roller coaster. And people will say, there's this factor, that factor, the other factor. But it's been very, very positive when everyone is looking down the same barrel of the gun. And we know ultimately where we want to go and where we want to get back. And please God, the senior team get there next weekend. That is back up, play McCarthy Cup, win the McDonagh Cup and get back up there. So that when these guys really, they've experienced a lot. We said the All-Ireland minor final last year, very unique occasion. Does last Wednesday night outshine it? Dr. Cullen Park, small ground, the atmosphere was absolutely electric. When we came out to the warm, happened to go back off the field when the game went back, and to come out the second time. To experience it once was brilliant, but to come out the second time and have to go through it again. And when you come out the second time, you realise that it had closed in around you another 10-15% because the crowd were in at that stage and getting in at that stage and getting ready to go mentally for the players. The experience that they're getting out of these nights and the Offaly following is just something that they'll learn in life. It's life lessons from, not alone in terms of GA lessons, but it's also life lessons that they're all actually mature in that extra bit as well. And look, we'll give Sunday week, 4th of June, one hell of a go. It's going to be some occasion, the All-Ireland minor final, the All-Ireland 20 final on the one day. Maybe is that the way to go in future? The uniqueness of the whole thing, and give these young players, their day in the sun and a standalone fixture below Turles. It's going to be absolutely unbelievable. The Offaly crowd will be there baying for blood. There's so much going on, and particularly that we end up playing Cork. Like at Andre's level, Offaly are back in the big time. We've played the biggest of them now. We've played the best of them. But overall, the course of the year, when you look at it in a different light, Michael, and I have to look at it in a different light. I have to put my managerial hat on, right? Like all the Kilcormac players this year have played in 3 Leinster finals. This is their second All-Ireland final. They played in the All-Ireland B Colleges final. This is their second All-Ireland final. If you ask these lads over a period of 12 months, would they play in 3 All-Ireland finals?
Yeah.
You know, like this is positive, regardless of the result in 2 weeks' time. There's huge experience being gained out of these players, and that is the most important thing, that we're going in the right direction and we're working really, really hard. I just want to pass compliment as well, because I brought in a guy by the name of Paul O'Donovan. You might know him. He's referee in Ireland's Fittest Family, right? Paul is the strength and conditioning guy with the under-20 hurling team. So there's a lot of other factors that are going on in the background that where we really have, and this is my back to the Offaly County Board, they really have invested in the future of Offaly hurling, and it's hopefully it comes along and that we get many as a night, but it's not going to be built around one team. As I said, the 2020 team, we're going to have to get 2 or 3 teams together, and we're going to have to do something to get an under 16 team or an under 15 team to come in another year or two time at minor level, because it, like the Limerick situation, I worked in the Limerick situation for 10 years, 11 years. That's a combination of teams to be where they are and to get the success where they are. And in terms of what we did, what we done, it can't be built around just this one team. And that's why I emphasised the 2020, 2021 minor teams. They were good as well. Cathal King came off of that. Colin Spain, they all came off the 2021 minor team. Cormac Egan, they're off a 20 minor team. So a combination of 3 minor teams come together. And look, the opportunities become available to us now, and it's one that we have to take.
Well, look, best of luck with that. It's going to be an unbelievable occasion. And even as a neutral, very much looking forward to it.
Thanks very much, Shane. Thanks, Michael.
Cheers, Leo. Thanks a million.
Thanks. Cheers.
Good
Thanks,
man. Appreciate it.
So a lot of positive comments coming in for Leo here. Marcus Lynch says, Leo O'Connor is your best contributor yet, Limerick City's finest. Keep him. Adrian McGrath says, so 2 harmless calls is your basis. This is obviously with regard to Johnny Murphy and referee in the game between Cork and Clare. How about the shoulder into Shane's back before McCarthy's beautiful point, and Cleary getting pulled for holding while Cahalan was at it as well? Mad point. Well, you might think so, but I was watching the game. As I said, I wasn't favouring one team over the other, really. And I generally don't even pay that much attention to how referees are going in games unless it really kind of sticks out to me. And I just thought, geez, Cork are after having a few harsh calls against them a few times. That was just my thought on it. Barry Nash getting a second yellow was very harsh, says Sean McGrath. Did you think it was very harsh?
He went, I don't know, like he went in and was kind of trying to pull the ball off him, and I don't know. There was a couple of calls.
Did he push Dan in the head? Like, I mean, he's on the ground.
Sure.
Pushing him in the head.
I'm not sure. Dan kind of, as he does, put the head down trying to win a free.
I mean, when Dan was on the ground.
Yeah, I didn't really see much of a push. It could have been, there was a couple of yellows and various things thrown around for Moughton over the weekend as well. Did Niall Morgan get a black card, I think, for Moughton at the referee in just her own Galway game as well. So there was a good few bits and pieces. I only saw the first half of Cork and Clare because it was down in Wexford Park yesterday, obviously. But like, Cork were playing the game on their terms in the opening quarter, big time, and they were getting direct ball inside, and there was loads of space inside. But Clare kind of just shut up shop, and I know they won by a point, and it was Dermot Ryan's point in the end, but it was probably that kind of second quarter. Was it 162 points, I think, in the second quarter? They're able to keep Cork really, really quiet. That was probably the game-winning burst, and then obviously the goal after half-time as well.
Yeah, Adrian Grass says Barry Nash hit McCormick in the head, definite yellow. Detox 101, I heard Watford are going to stop the bus at the Horse and Jockey and throw Davy off and go out and hurl away. No tactics or tic-tacs. Will they throw a shit next Sunday or not? We actually don't know. We really don't know what to expect from Watford next week. What team will be picked? What sort of training are they doing? How motivated are they? Are some players like already in Chicago or Boston or whatever, mentally?
Yeah, we'll have a fair idea on Thursday, I'd say, because, you get a lie of the land, you chat to a few people during the week, you see what they've done, you see what the mood is around, who's, as you said before, like if someone has an injury, they're not going to play, realistically. But yeah, there still is a fair bit to play for the players and definitely for the management as well.
Yeah, so Clare won 222 to 318. It was an excellent game, very exciting. One of the things, and I love viewers' points on this, but early on in the game, I thought Patrick Horgan and Seamus Harnedy were really good. But I thought after about 15 minutes or so, and maybe there was some changes from Clare, but I just thought that all of a sudden the pace of Adam Hogan and Rory Hayes, they started winning every ball out in front. And I think we can all understand why you wouldn't take Patrick Horgan off, even though he wasn't playing particularly well. But leaving both him and Seamus Harnedy and Lahan on for quite as long as they did, I thought that was strange when they have that quality on the bench. And particularly, I thought, like, maybe leave Declan Dalton on. Maybe he wasn't setting the world absolutely alight, but he's younger and fresher. Maybe throw him in the square and maybe, substitute Harnedy in that particular game. And look, I think Harnady's class, but it just wasn't happening for him at all. The other thing is we have to talk about Conor Cleary's injury because he was in huge pain. Derek Lynch from Clare FM was tweeting word coming through that Conor Cleary suffered a shoulder dislocation today. A sign of a lion-heartedness of the man is that he actually got hurt about 5 minutes before he went off, but carried on because Cork were on the attack. He is going to be a huge loss. Like last year, you saw what happened. The team fell apart when John Conlon wasn't there against Kilkenny. Now, obviously, Clare finished out the game and won it, brought on Shane Amori. But he is a huge loss because he's quietly been the rock of that defence.
Yeah, when you know a fella is in big bother, and you just knew by looking at him because he's a very, very physical player, and I don't think I've ever really seen him down in a game before, so you knew he was in trouble. Shane Amori came in and did really well at stages, but I've said it to you before, it's one thing a lad coming in a game, who starts full back the next day? Do teams start going after a high ball into the edge of the square then from the off? Just on that as well, mentioned about Niall Mitchell's prowess in the air. Like Peter Duggan, they just got ball into him. It was literally at stages in the first half. It was just, from what I saw, it was just get ball into him and balls would break off. And Tony Kelly got a goal obviously off him as well. But Clare are definitely going to have to rearrange the deck chairs. Like, is there another full back? Like, they're not going to drop David McInerney back full back, are they? Realistically,
like you put Paul Flanagan in there even.
Yeah, but that's a cornerback going fullback. Do you know what I mean?
I know. Yeah, they did win an All-Ireland with him there before, and I'm just looking at some of the other options that were on the bench. I just happen to have the programme from the tip match here. Keane Nolan, he's obviously not a particularly tall player. Aaron Fitzgerald, I don't know if he's played fullback that much. Yeah, I mean, the options, there aren't 1,000,001 options there in terms of who you play in the full-back line, and maybe some of our commenters did give a suggestion there.
Because it is a different story completely when you've to start the lad at the edge of the square and a team can maybe bombard them, or they went with kind of mobility, particularly in the two corners yesterday. And at different stages, it was almost kamikaze stuff in the first half there, where there was 40 or 50 yards in front of the full back line. But they seemed happy enough to kind of play that way. But it could be a different kettle of fish completely with, high ball to an edge of a square. If it was Tip in a Munster final, maybe Tip would put Garrod O'Connor into the edge of the square, or you just don't know, or maybe they put Seamus Callan into the edge of the square as well. But it's definitely going to cause Brian Lohan a serious headache. He was obviously one of the greatest fullbacks of all time. Conor Cleary has basically been there since he took over, and now he's going to have to find someone else. Hopefully Conor can be back towards the tail end of the championship, but looked as serious as Derek suggested there.
Yeah, it'd be very difficult to imagine he'd be back for the championship this year. Do you know what really stuck out to me was early on in the game, I thought Cork are playing well here. They're taking that extra pass. They're not just panicking on the ball. And Conor Cahalane, his finish for his goal in the first half, I thought was really good. He took it all the way in and made sure that there was no chance for Eva Quilligan. And I was thinking that the last time he played here was in the club for St. Finbarrs last year when he got a red card, which was totally harsh. So I thought that was quite a good moment for him. But then I suppose later in the half, he got blocked down twice in areas where he should have known that the block was coming, planting the feet but like a good player. I just thought the Patrick Horgan performance was, he started off well, got a nice point, did work his socks off, don't get me wrong, and chased hard. But, being outpaced by some of those inside defenders for Clare, it's no disgrace in that. But his penalty, much like Jack O'Connor's penalty for Wexford, what's going on with penalty takers? His penalty was, I've never seen him strike a ball as poorly until the shot for his goal. I don't think he placed it I just think he mishit it and it went in. I could be wrong, but I just felt he was a little bit off colour. And then now the quick turnaround to the Limerick game as well. It's a big ask for a player who's on the road that long.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I think we'll probably chat about Darren Gleason's comments later, where he said they were trying to microwave hurling, wasn't it? That what he said? Like, it does get more difficult. But especially for older players. But I think Cork could be happy enough in general getting Limerick a week after that bruising encounter against Tip. And it's just like Cork have only lost one game in the championship this year. I would say they lost with a fair bit of merit as well. And they have shown glimpses of things being a little bit different under Pat Ryan. Now, if they really want to rubber stamp that, they'll get a result against Limerick next Sunday. And wouldn't they be some dangerous prospect coming through that back door, were they to knock out the 4 in a row chasing All-Ireland champions along the way, having earned a draw against Tip that they probably didn't deserve, having nearly got something out of a game yesterday that they maybe didn't deserve either. So like it's all teed up for an absolute cracker next Sunday.
Yeah, to me now it's either going to be David McInerney slipping in fullback or Paul Flanagan, and I would say it's going to be McInerney. That's what I would imagine will happen.
Who goes wing back then?
Well, they have options. I think it's easier to find
Shane
wing back.
Amori, maybe Shane Amori wing back, maybe. Yeah,
it's always easier to find a wing back. Pao K says, "Do neutrals want to see Clare win in All Ireland? Personally, can't warm to them all their diving and simulation."
I didn't. I've heard of some incidents in the second half. Didn't get to see them. I didn't get to. I'll have to look at them back. There's probably been a couple of incidents. I'm not going to comment too much because I didn't see the incidents that are in question. But there were a few in other games that are unsavoury, to say the least.
I'm just going to see there are a few more comments. Catnap says, "Cork are the Munster team that have given Limerick the least trouble of the past few years in Championship. Sunday's game will either be a reset for Limerick or a new dawn for Cork."
Yeah.
Shane, a word on that filthy helmet grab from Barrett, a cut and dry red card. Didn't like him aiming his head at Morrissey's shoulder either. No better player to give it out and not be able to take it. Well, I don't think it's that he couldn't take it. I mean, like, if he took the hit to the head and he wasn't feeling right, irrespective of whether he dipped his shoulder or not, or dipped his head, which he did dip his head in, because obviously he's expecting the hit and he's leaning in to maybe help him absorb the hit. But yeah, he dipped his head too low. So to some degree, he's kind of, he's lined himself up for it a little bit. But I don't think Barrett's going around complaining, is he? He's well able to take it, I give it.
I think he's well able to take it. I'm surprised you didn't bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up. Tip were leading 10 points to 7, and in a bit of bother, 22nd, 23rd minute, and Nicky Quaid goes down.
Sure, look, his contact lens was at him. Look,
no,
that flares up every time Limerick concede a few scores.
Balance here. 41st minute, Tip in trouble. Brian O'Mara goes down.
Yeah, no, they're dead right. I mean, I don't blame Nicky Quaid for doing it, and I don't blame Brian O'Mara for doing it. I think you're stupid to not do it.
And see, the problem that arises is when Cathal Barrett goes down, genuinely, I'm not saying that both of those aren't ingenuine, but there was
not to be disingenuous.
There was some level of optics to it. But when Cathal Barrett goes down, then people are why is he taking his helmet off? And he's genuinely concussed, as was proven by the fact that he had to come off. But I just thought that was an interesting side. Just a couple of other quick points on Tip and Limerick. Connor Bowe is some bio because he was brought on and taken off against Cork, and he was brilliant when he came on yesterday. I only watched the game this morning. Maybe need to watch it again. But this is the first time I've seen a championship match, and a brilliant championship match. Was there no goal chances in this game? Were there no goal chances in the game?
I kind of marked down.
Was there a shot on either of the keepers?
No. So you had the time when Bonner Maher flicked the ball through for Jake Morris, and he was done for a throw, which to me, it was not a throw.
Oh, that was so obvious, hand pass. So obvious.
And he was running straight through on goal. And Jake Morris would have ran in, done his usual, throw the ball up, one-handed tennis finish. I'm pretty sure he doesn't really miss those chances.
But there wasn't like either keeper wasn't called into action in that regard to make a save.
Nicky Quaid spilled the ball. That was it as well. That was the only other one that I can think of. But Eibhear Quilligan had a couple of nervy moments again. Like, so there was that high ball in. I think Conor Lahan hit a shot that dropped short in the second half, and Seamus Hardy got a flick and it went just wide. I mean, I think we all thought for the world that this ball is going into the back of the net. And I couldn't understand Quilligan waiting on the line and standing for the ball to drop to him. It was never going to get that far unless the defender, I mean, you probably blame the defender as well, not holding the man out. But it just seemed like, that was a nervy moment. And then, of course, the Horgan goal as well. If you go through their games, they've been leaking goals, haven't they?
Yeah, no, they have, in fairness. Yeah, they have, in fairness. There's just a couple of good comments in there. Someone said about, was Gerard Hegarty's goal chance. I genuinely don't even know if he was going for a goal. I just think he could have said it. Was he really?
I think he was thinking, I'm going to stitch this into the top corner. The power of the shot he had against Kilkenny the previous. Yeah, to me, he was going for a goal. Yeah.
Jeez, that was so far out to be taking a shot from. I'm amazed that he just didn't tap it over and get his confidence in. He was probably pulled off not that long after that. But Jesus, there's so many incidents between those two games alone, wasn't there? It was just proper high octane Munster Championship. I was watching the closing minutes of Tip and Limerick in Wexford Park, and I could feel what was going on in Semple Stadium, and God only knows how many 100 miles away.
Yeah, and the atmosphere was absolutely class in Thurles. No, really enjoyed it now, I have to say. Just a couple of more points about the Cork-Clare game. I thought Cork competed very hard. I think they had one more positive turnovers in the first half. They created lots of chances. Obviously, they were down by 5 at half time, but they were struggling with the running power of Ryan Taylor, Aidan McCarthy, Shane O'Donnell. Like, O'Donnell has been just unbelievable. Mark Rogers and Peter Duggan, like, it didn't fully happen for Rogers, but at times he won some nice ball. There was one ball that was arrowed up the field, and he just did a sort of like a beautiful touch and set up possibly Peter Duggan for a score. No, actually, Tony Kelly, who'd had 1-4 in the first half, but he actually missed a shot from about 30 yards out, which is incredible. But his goal where he got the little flick, obviously long ball in, broke down, little scoop and finish. Just glorious stuff to watch.
Class, yeah. Do you know something you mentioned with Tony Kelly's miss, and even thinking of Graham Mulcahy's miss at the end as well? There's something about mistakes that just make games more interesting. It's like a game of snooker. Like, seeing century breaks is brilliant, but the nervousness and the tension of people not cracking under pressure, but missing shots that they'd normally score in their sleep. That's the drama and the nerves and excitement that we love. And yeah, it was definitely in abundance in those two games yesterday.
Hugh Paddy says atmosphere in Ennis was mental, freed from desire down at full time. Gas. River Power, Bow Blow, it's hot and cold. Anyone who's seen his underage career knows that. Hopefully he can find consistency. I think at under 20 though, he got man of the match in 5 out of the 8 games. That tip chant is the most annoying sound in GA. Oofalia.
I think people generally like the Oofalia chant. Tip. It's just, I don't know. Yeah, won't be a big fan of it now.
Do you know, we were just talking beforehand about the cumulative crowds over the weekend in both Leinster and Munster, and we couldn't quite get an attendance for the game between Galway and Antrim, but we know that it was quite low. So we're going to guess it was somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000. At Nolan Park, I thought this was incredible. There was only 5,500 showed up to watch Kilkenny and Dublin. And then there was 2,500 at the game that you were at, give or take, at Wexford Park between Wexford and Westmeath. So we'll just broadly say 10 or 12,000 was down at all the Leinster games. You add, and that's 3 games. The 2 Munster games, 55,000, give or take. It just tells you the difference in the product. And again, I think we just need to start putting the 2 tables together after the provincial championships. Like, would Nolan Park be packed out for Kilkenny against Tip, for Kilkenny against Limerick? Like, why are we not playing these teams against each other? It's nuts. Get rid of the league.
Well, 100% it would be. And the crowds that were at the Leinster matches just showing the lack of appetite. Like, I did a piece for the match program, and it was about, like, is there any chance of a miracle? And it would have been, as I said to you, Dublin have only beaten Kilkenny once since 1942 in the championship. And then the other 2 games looked like they could be turkey shoots, and one of them was. And then we had probably the greatest miracle in the history of the GA, but you couldn't have foreseen it. And there's just not a massive appetite there for it. Outside of Dublin, Wexford, there was only 10,000 there, obviously, but it was an interesting game because it was going to see who was going to come third. So there was plenty of interest in it. Kilkenny, Galway, with Shefflin going back to Nolan Park. And this weekend will be interesting, but the same appetite is just not there. There's no point in saying any different.
Yeah, I was chatting to Brian Barry, a journalist, on the train down to Semple Stadium yesterday, and he was telling me a very interesting stat about the Munster Championship. In the years of the round robins, any manager who hasn't finished in the top 3 and basically qualified from the Munster Championship, they haven't been the manager the following season.
Oh, Lord, right, okay.
Isn't that something else? So you go back to 2018, it was Jerry O'Connor and Jerry, what's the name of the 2 lads that were over Clare again?
Donald Maloney and Jerry O'Connor, yeah.
Donald Maloney, I was mixing it all up. And also Derek McGrath. Then the following year, it was Pádraig Fanning, and it was, who else didn't get out of?
John Myler.
Then was it 20?
Was it 19? Year? No, I'm wrong. I'm wrong saying that. I don't think it was Myler. I can't actually think offhand.
Yeah, well, he had the stat, but it's very interesting that the those that don't get out. So
hey, listen. Yeah, if you're going on that, so Waterford are gone. So that history would suggest that David Fitzgerald might be there. If Limerick were beaten, and this is purely hypothetical, would John Kiley not be gone, but would he potentially depart? It's amazing. Like, that's why Sunday is going to be absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it really will. So let's move on to the Leinster Championship then, shall we?
Yeah,
move back to it. Kilkenny getting the job done. I suppose everyone expected him to win that game, But they didn't do what they did last year, which was absolutely batter Dublin. Was it something like 17 points or thereabouts at Parnell Park? And, it was a very dispiriting display. But here, Dublin, yeah, they lacked the scoring power up front. Ronan Hayes been out I think he's going to be out for a while with a hamstring injury. That was a bit of a blow. So I think Derek Ling will be happy because obviously he has another positive result there. They're going to be up in a Leinster final again. And, they're against a Wexford team that are, basically gone next week. But, good performance from both sides in a way. And Dublin, obviously, they know now that they're going to progress no matter what. So Micheál Donoghue will be pleased to know that's in the back pocket.
Yeah, 100%. They've probably a couple of weeks before that preliminary quarter final after they play Galway this weekend. And that's obviously him going back to play against his native county in a county he led to an All-Ireland. But
you'd fancy getting Dublin, wouldn't you, in a preliminary All-Ireland quarter final as an Offaly man?
Well, I'd fancy getting Dublin over potentially playing Limerick, I'll put you that way, or playing Cork. Losers play, it's mad, like the losers of the Joe McDonagh could be facing Limerick in a couple of weeks later. Like, that's just bizarre, really, when you think about it. You couldn't have envisaged it at the start of the year. That could yet be us. We'll see how that kind of plays out. But from a Kilkenny point of view, I think the one worrying thing, I only saw the highlights of the game back, but just from chatting to a few people who were there, that a lot of the Shamrocks lads maybe looked a bit leggy and a bit tired, maybe outside of TJ Reid. And just from what I've been told, Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen, even TJ, maybe a bit more quiet than they normally would be. TJ was obviously kept very quiet from play the other night as well, as were the other shoot lads to a great extent. I wouldn't say it's worrying at this stage, but for Kilkenny to motor well when it really matters, for them to win a fourth Leinster in a row, for them to be real contenders, they're going to need all of those lads hopping off the sod. So that's definitely one worry for them anyway. But a couple of, on the flip side of that, Mikey Butler was definitely back to himself the other night. He gave an absolutely brilliant performance. Red Lad is just coming in there. Thought Dublin were okay for 25 to 30 minutes of each half, the last 5 minutes of the first half, and midway in the second half, Kilkenny pulled away. Yeah, it was kind of tit for tat most of the way, and then Kilkenny were able to pull away at the end of each half. But interesting, what do Kilkenny do going into this weekend? They obviously know they have their Leinster final place secured. This game is not as of much relevance to them as it is for Wexford. So it's just going to be fascinating to see if Derek Ling rolls the dice a small bit with giving a few more lads chances. Tom Phelan was decent the other night as well, actually. He got another go. If Derek Ling rolls the dice, that has potentially devastating effects for maybe an Antrim and maybe a Westmeath as well. So that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's handy to be in Leinster there where you can sort of,
The only thing I'd say is that they're obviously not as cutthroat as Munster, but they do play 5 games, whereas Munster play 4. So
do you hear yourself?
That's another 70 minutes of competitive action.
Yeah, and a couple of the matches are like challenge matches for Limerick and Galway. Galway won one of their games by 34 points, and you really think I'm supposed to take this seriously?
Just saying, they're playing another game. Am I wrong? Facts are facts. Hurling is hurling.
Hey, look at the Leinster table here. So Galway, they're obviously top and motoring well. They've got Dublin next week. Kilkenny, who are facing Wexford, they're also on 7 points. Dublin, I've mentioned 5 points. Wexford, they can't qualify. Obviously, Westmeath are on 2 points now. And then Antrim, if Antrim beat Westmeath next week, that's what we're talking about in terms of Wexford are relegated down to the Joe McDonagh Cup for next year, which would be quite something. But in terms of the lads who did the scoring for Kilkenny over the weekend, TJ, he hit 10 frees. Paddy Deegan, he scored 3 points, as did Tom Phelan. Adrian Mullen, Mossy Keown and Owen Cody scored 2 each. And then there was a glut of players who scored a point each. For Dublin, Donald Burke, he scored 10. 8 of those were frees. I thought Danny Sutcliffe showed signs of old there. I thought he was quite good. Mark Rogan continues his decent form. He scored a couple of points, as did his Kilmacud Crokes teammate, Dara Purcell, and then there was a few other players who scored a point each. I thought Conor Donoghue was very good. Do you know what? Again, Dublin, they have a lot of really good backs. It's just that bit further up the field that you don't feel that the threat is there. Like Cian O'Sullivan needs to really catch fire for the remainder of the season. Cian Boland needs to start firing over a load of scores if they're going to cause a shock. And I don't think they will. I think they'll always put it up to a team. They'll never hammer a minnow. They do now and again, but they rarely do. And they generally keep it into most of the top teams, bar the odd team like a Cork or a Tip who seem to fill at them occasionally.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. It's kind of hard to see them taking a scalp or anything, maybe, but they will be competitive. I just couldn't get over the bits I saw this game, how pedestrian it was, how much time even lads had striking balls over the bar from out the pitch. Just kind of strange, I have to say. It was kind of strange looking at it. I thought Darragh Purcell made a big impact when he came in. He got a great score when he'd no room to strike there near the end as well. Basically, it's all down in that preliminary quarter-final for Dublin and then potentially an All-Ireland quarter-final. Yeah, I'd be the same as you. I don't think they'll take a scalp, but they're competitive. And if they can get a good cohort of lads that have stepped out for this year and get them back next year, that'll only bolster the ranks a bit more.
I just actually want to go back to the table again. And like, do you see Dublin beating Galway? Do you think that's on the cards? Donoghue getting one over on his old players?
Not realistically, Shane. It's in Croke Park as well, which I don't know if that suits Dublin more than it suits Galway. I wouldn't think so, really. Galway, a very athletic side as well. I'd say it'd be some similar type of gap, maybe 5 or 6 by the end.
Did you think the same in 2019 when Donoghue was obviously wearing the other Banish door bib?
Yeah, there's no Chris Crummy, no Liam Rush. I don't think they have those players. No Conal Keeney, who took the game by the scruff of the neck. That I just don't see those players within Dublin at the moment. I think what they've achieved so far is pretty decent. When you look at it after the Antrim game, were we thinking that they'd get third place? We're probably thinking maybe we'd be favouring Wexford. And I just said it to you off air there. We're going to have to do a power rankings on Thursday and put our necks on the block before Munster finishes up.
Yeah, well, at least we put our necks on the block. It's easy to be this lad who never fully gives an opinion or a prediction or whatever. You're always right when you're never actually putting your neck on the block.
Very true, yeah. If you don't say anything, you're never wrong, but you're never right. And
yeah.
I don't think anyone really wants to listen to that.
So, like this coming weekend, Kilkenny know that they can rest Richie Reid. He came off injured. We don't know how long he's out for or if he's out, but they can rest him. Whereas Limerick have to play absolutely everybody, whereas Cork have to play absolutely everybody. And that's the last thing I'll say in terms of the difference between the two provincial codes or the two provincial championships.
The only other thing I'd say about that is, as well, just to throw this into the mix as well, Waterford are on 0 points in Munster and have been terrible. Would Waterford get into the top 3 in Leinster?
Yes.
Probably. Or they definitely, if they've been performing anything like last year's, they definitely would.
Would Kilkenny get out of Munster?
Yeah, I think they would. I think they'd probably be third, though. But this is...
ahead of Limerick?
Well, this year, yeah. If that's the case, then yeah. I think they would get out of Munster, yeah.
After the way that Kilkenny got hockeyed in the league final?
After the way that Kilkenny ran Limerick to 2 points in the All-Ireland final last year.
Without Peter Casey and Keane Lynch?
Yeah, but look, you're going down some blind alley here. Like, Limerick were the best team in the country by a mile after the league. Like, we obviously can't read too much into that. Look at all the water under the bridge since then.
Look, we can keep this row going all day. David F. will be as critical of Tip as you are of Limerick every week when it comes to playing on the edge. Barrett is a disgrace, and McCormick started to Lee after the game, mouthing. But, like, obviously I'm not going to criticise my own Burris Saliman in Dan McCormick. He had a great game. But, like, I mean, were Tip a disgrace? Or, like, what were they a disgrace? Was there a load of head-high tackles that I didn't comment on? I mean, Ronan Maher, when he connected with the head of Robbie O'Flynn last week, I said, yeah, it should be a red card. So, like, I don't know. I am as critical of Tip.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought there was a lot of stuff on the edge from a lot of teams over the weekend, and that's kind of what we want to see. I honestly don't think we're overly critical of Limerick at all, to be honest with you. I think you just call what you see on a given day. If some other team does it, and we see it, and we'll highlight it as well. But I don't think we're over critical of one team, and I don't know if this is even a word, but if we're under critical of others, I definitely don't think so.
Yeah, Galway, they had a very comprehensive win over Antrim, 529 to 122. Like you mentioned already, Darren Gleeson said it's like a microwave championship. He said, we go to every game giving it everything, not trying to get a one-game shootout. We should have had our business done earlier in the round robin instead of coming to here. But it's frustrating. We played 3 games in 13 days. A microwave championship was used, and then you have other teams in the same competition. They get 3 weeks preparation for it. We need to look at it. We're trying to ram our best product in the GA into a small window, and for what? And it's hard when we come down and we have 8 or 9 serious intercounty players who can't take the field. So, yeah, and they did. They were missing an awful lot of players. Galway ended up scoring 529 from 50 shots. Bit of a concern over Cathal Mannion, but maybe they can rest him next week against Dublin. But it is very, very difficult for Antrim, because like the physicality of a lot of these games, and when you lose a few players, it's going to be difficult. And like there's no getting away from it. Kilkenny and Galway, for example, have bigger, more physical players, or a greater abundance of it. So you're probably it's going to be very attritional on a panel that's probably not as big or doesn't have the same amount of big tanks.
Very attritional, and if that Westmeath game is the last game, which it is, you could be battered black and blue by the time you get to that game. If it's the first game, but listen, the way that the Leinster fixture makers have done it meant that everything goes down to the last weekend, or what you think is going to go down to the last weekend, and that's kind of what we want. But it's kind of an interesting one. You're trying to make sure. I'm sure after game 3, Darren Gleeson is thinking, I need to have as many lads as is humanly possible fit to play this Westmeath game, which is ultimately going to, it's going to define our season. And it looks like he's going to be down a few bodies as well. From a Westmeath point of view, Killian Dykes is obviously still out, but they didn't pick up any injuries yesterday, I don't think. And they're obviously going into that Antrim game fairly cock-a-hoop after probably the greatest result in their hurling history, realistically.
Do you think there's any chance that the Leinster Council or the GA will rejig the Leinster Championship to keep Wexford in if they do get relegated?
Chatting a man last night, he played, I'm not sure what year it was, I'm going to say about 10 or 12 years ago. They played Clare. Wexford played Clare in a relegation semi-final. They were going to be relegated from the championship, and it was supposed to be a relegation final. Don't remember who they were supposed to play. Wexford lost it anyway. The relegation final was never played, and the rules were essentially changed to make sure that there was no relegation. So something similar could happen. Can I just say as well, as a Leinster hurling person, I would take no joy in Wexford getting relegated. As I said, it's the opposite of Offaly. Wexford maybe they'll be on a downward spiral in a couple of years, but if you name out 5 or 6 of their top men, they're still as good as anything that's out there. Like, that was a bit of a freak maybe yesterday, but they ran Galway close. They'll probably run Kilkenny close this weekend as well. They were beaten score by Dublin. They're not on some sort of downward spiral. So I actually don't think it would be good for hurling in general or Wexford hurling if they were relegated. But that's the position they found themselves in.
Yeah. So just the scorers for Galway: Evan Nyland, he hit 8 points, 3 of those from play. Conor Cooney with 7, 2 goals for Conor Whelan. Tom Monaghan won 2. Kevin Cooney the same. Declan McLaughlin with 4 points. Liam Collins with a goal, and a few other players chipping in as well. Conal Cunning scored 1-3, 1-2 of those from place balls. James McNaughton scored 5, 2 of those from play. Paddy Burke with 3, Conor Johnson with 3. So plenty of guys scoring for Antrim, but it was a pretty comprehensive defeat. So very interested to see if Cathal Mannion's going to be around next week. I think he only lasted 7 minutes of the game, and this is after a season fairly affected by injury. You have Brian Kincannon as well. He's got a bit of an issue. Fintan Burke, he was taken off after a collision yesterday as well. So Shefflin has plenty to ponder there. We'll just go through some of the results in the Christy Ring Cup, and you might give the ramifications then on the back of it. London 228, Tyrone 417. So that was London on top there. Derry 30 points, Mayo 111, Meath 24, Sligo 18.
Look at this, Stephen Loftus, complete opposite to Verdi. Would love to see Wexford relegated. That's what we like. Don't hold back. If that's your opinion, then that's your opinion.
What county are you from, Stephen, and why?
Yeah, what would he be?
I'm going to go with Waterford.
Kilkenny, Waterford, one of the bordering counties, you'd imagine. Wicklow, maybe. I doubt it, though. But the Christy Ring Cup, so this sets up basically Sligo and Meath was a de facto semi-final. So it will be Meath and Derry in the Christy Ring Cup final. Derry were obviously beaten in the Ring Cup final 2 years ago by Offaly. But it was there. They beat London over in Ruislip, a real high-scoring game, in round 4 of the Christy Ring, and that's basically booked their place in the final. In the Nicky Rackard Cup, we had Louth 27 points, Armagh 314. I think Darren Gagan put up a huge score here again, as is commonplace for him. Wicklow beat Donegal 217 to 118, and Roscommon were 217 to 118 winners over Fermanagh. So the Wicklow-Donegal game, Donegal beat Wicklow in Division 2B League semi-final on this year. Wicklow beat them here, and they'll meet again in the Nicky Rackard Cup final. So, they both have 1 win apiece going into the final. So signs would suggest that that's going to be fairly tight. And in the Lorimar Cup, it was finished Leitrim 219, Cavan 218, Monaghan 216, Longford 317, and Lancashire had a mighty win over Warwickshire, the Battle of Britain, maybe you could call it, 5-13.
They'd love to hear that.
Yeah, 5-13. Well, they're both in Britain, like, you know what I mean. Lancashire 5-13, Warwickshire 3-17. I'd like to give a big shout out to two buddies from home, Conor Kendi from Clarine, Sir Kieran Club. He was playing for Lancashire, and a former club mate of my own, Cormac Kenny, who was playing with Lancashire as well. They booked their place in the final in Croke Park in a few weeks. No doubt that'll be a big occasion for them.
Yeah, and then in the All-Ireland minor semi-finals, Galway 3-18, Cork 1-10, Aaron Nyland, you know, it's routine enough for him to score 111 at this stage.
Shane, it's very, like it's, you don't like getting too excited and putting too much pressure on the likes of him or Adam Screeney, but when you keep putting up performances like that, tongues are going to wag, like, aren't they? And people just, like, he's so like the brother as well, off the left too. Favours that kind of left-hand side, but he just looks such an exciting talent.
Yeah, and Clare beat Kilkenny 23 points to 15, so that's going to be a great occasion. I think both Clare and Offaly will travel in big numbers for that game in with the under-20 game.
Hoping to have the support of Clare and Galway for the under-20 final as well against Cork. Against Cork. I'd imagine that would be the case.
Yeah. Okay, so looking at the football then, there was some big results over the weekend. I mean, insofar as they're big, because 3 out of 4 teams are going to get through every group in the All-Ireland series.
Can I just make a point on that, Shane? Because I thought it was interesting. Aidan O'Shea was asked after Debbie Kerry, his man of the match, and he just said, like, what do you think of the new All-Ireland series? And he says, I only realised during the week who will go through because the focus is just to win games, but it's a funny one. I think we play 24 odd games and there's only 4 teams that will leave the competition. Like, it does seem very, very convoluted. Like, there's a load of games going on, and for football purists, that's great. But there's a load of games going on to get rid of very, very few teams, which to me just seems quite strange.
Yeah, well, I'll just go through some of the results then. So Galway beat Tyrone 16-13. Mayo had a 119 to 17 points win in Killarney. Then you had Donegal beating Clare 14 points to 9, and Sligo drew with Kildare 14 points apiece. The Talchin Cup, we'll come back to that in a minute. But I watched the Mayo-Kerry game, and I thought it was really exciting. I thought it was interesting to watch how Mayo were moving. The frailties of Kerry, the loss of David Moore, and again being rammed home, I would suggest. But I suppose we were chatting beforehand in terms of, who's your All-Ireland favourite now at this stage, based on what you've seen so far this year?
Still Dublin, being honest with you. It was Dublin kind of before the championship, and it's probably still Dublin now.
But when they played Kildare, did you not come away thinking, oh, maybe not?
Yeah, but I wouldn't be like you now. I wouldn't abandon a ship based on one result.
I'm out.
I'd stay true till the end. No, I think everything, all signs suggest that the only thing on their minds is one more All-Ireland, and I think this would be the last for this cohort. And I think the Cluxton coming back, Mannion coming back, McCaffrey coming back, and just even the Leinster final performance was up 3 or 4 gears on the Kildare performance. So that would probably be what I see. But just on Mayo, Jesus, they never cease to amaze. They never cease to bring drama to the whole thing. Won the league, beaten a week later by Roscommon. 6 weeks later, we're not sure what they're going to do. Well, I was fairly sure that they'd deliver a performance. Probably didn't think they'd win. They go down and win pretty comprehensively down in Killarney. First time Kerry were beaten in Killarney since 1995, the Munster final against Cork, I think. And Aidan O'Shea, who'd been brilliant during the league, was brilliant again. Matty Rowan dictating things around the middle with Dermot O'Connor. Jack Carney was brilliant. James Carr was brilliant in the first half. Ryan O'Donoghue, very, very good as well. They just it's like when the expectation is high, they maybe don't deliver. When the expectations that are dampered a small bit, they just rise back up again. You can't help. We've an image on the OurGame site, and it's like the hype train. It's just like you can't help but be aboard the hype train yet again.
Yeah, I see Galway as the favourites for the All-Ireland. I think they've just got such depth, such power. They've been to a final. They know what it's about. So I don't see any reason why I wouldn't back them all the way. I think they've just got more balance, and I think they've got 2 of the biggest game breakers in the country in Damien Comer and Shane Walsh, obviously, as well.
And a couple of more alongside them now, based on what, Peter Cook was brilliant the other day, Matthew Tierney, Rob Finnerty. It was interesting the other day, actually. There was a real good tactical substitution. Who was Dylan McHugh picking up? There was someone ended up, basically Rob Finnerty, whoever Dylan McHugh was marking, I think was black card. It could have been Frank Burns, actually. And then basically Rob Finnerty came on as a result of that. They said, we're going to exploit, a potential weakness in Tyrone at the moment. There's also that mad scenario where Peter Hart ended up in the goals when Niall Morgan was black-carded, which is not something you see too often either.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You don't see players getting black carded for John that much, but I presume Niall Morgan said something that merited. Sure, like Liam Cahill obviously got red carded as well for doing a bit of John. But Frank Burns had to go, didn't he? He connected too high with Jack Glynn, and that's a tough one on Jack Glynn as well, having to go off there. But I don't think Burns can have complaints whether he went to do them or not, and I don't think he did. But if you're going to go in at that speed and you connect with the head.
Lads need to realise now, these tackles are being particularly highlighted now, and the same in hurling. Like, Shane, you mark my words, there will be a high-profile red card in hurling this year for a head-high challenge. Definitely will be. It's just because it's been talked about so much, and people just don't like the tackles. Jack just says Galway Mayo. Just says the previous comment there, Shane, if you can bring it back up. Galway Mayo surprise Kerry. Galway Mayo surprise Kerry. Or surprise Kerry was so poor. May not have tested whatever about being open to more worried for Kerry about loss of foreign players. Just there was a lot of their best players outside of David Clifford. They're real marquee men, and maybe a good second half for Paul Ganey. Their big men were kind of struggling. Thomas Sullivan got up to kick a point or two, but probably defensively maybe wasn't as solid as he was like. Jason Foley was under pressure at different stages. Dylan Casey was under pressure. Tyg Morley looked like he was going to have to go off at one stage. They definitely didn't look as secure. Like, Mayo had a bag full of goal chances. Yeah. 3 really good goal chances in the first half. And it's gas. The goal that they did get from Owen McLaughlin was a daisy cutter, whereas all the other ones were nearly straight at Shane Ryan before that. I just don't understand. Like, it's mad, the effort that goes into intercounty. I know lads have a head of steam and maybe they're not thinking, but just put the ball on the ground, hurling of football. It makes it so much more difficult for anybody to stop.
Yeah, Colin Reap had his 2 saves to make as well, and there was another one that was tipped. Like, David Clifford was mad for goals, and he did go low at one of them, but Reap got in the way.
One hit off someone's head on the line, I think, as well.
I was trying to figure out, and I couldn't even tell on the replay. Did it hit a hand or a head, or what did it do? And was it the goalkeeper or defender? But I don't know, I couldn't quite make it out. But I would say, like, David Clifford obviously had some very good moments, but I thought Mayo did okay in terms of, like, kind of a gang would go over towards him anytime he had the ball. How open Kerry were at the back, I think, would be very, very concerning. Like, obviously, Tyg Morley's trying to stand back and be the +1 at times, but other times he's getting drawn out, and the D was wide open. I'm not, like, putting it straight at his door, right?
I couldn't believe that, though. Could you, like, because it's not something we saw. The door was ajar at various stages on Saturday.
Yeah, and look, I just thought that was so worrying. Like, Diarmuid O'Connor was sprinting through at times, Matthew Rowan, and, like, Mayo have all these brilliant runners, so why wouldn't you use them? Like James Carr, I just love watching him play because he plays like a guy in the playground. He's mad for goals, he's mad for points from distance. Like, he's a brilliant player, and like, he tried to force that goal opportunity. Great save from Shane Ryan. It was kind of at him, but like, I thought it was an interesting stat. Then I think it was Mike Finnerty who was commentating, and he was saying that he hasn't scored a championship goal since that beauty against Galway.
Yeah.
2019, 4 years ago at this stage.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. I just love Carr's kind of lazy kicking style. He just kind of just lazy right-footed, leans out to the right and kind of kicks, yeah. But McStay has a lot of guys that have been in and around the squad the last couple of years, but he has them in form and he has them playing really, really well. And like what he's done with Aidan O'Shea was kicking frees from the right hand side the other day and kicking them pretty well too. I think he only missed one at the end. And he had a comment just in the aftermath of the game. He just said, we didn't become a bad team overnight, and probably a lot of people had written us off for the rest of the season. Don't know if many people had written them off, but it's good to know that people are listening anyway, because if anyone writes you off in any quarter, someone will hear it and they will use it as motivation. That's the way the GA is.
I think I'm kind of half writing off Kerry for this season. A little bit. Like, I mean,
I'd be worried,
every team is pretty flawed, but I feel when it comes down to it this year, Mayo, Galway, possibly even Dublin, because they've returned those players. Con was obviously injured last year, Paul Mannion, Jack McCaffrey, and we'll wait and see how this Stephen Cluxton thing goes, because I'm not ultimately convinced that it's going to be a brilliant move. And let's say his next performance is, at a lower level than the Louth game, where half of his kickouts were turned over in the first half. Does Farrell then go, okay, I know we dropped you, but would you mind coming back into the goals there, David O'Hanlon? You know,
Stapleton heaps pressure on Cluxton. There you go.
I'm not shying away from that. But Park Gill says here, head high tackles have been in the spotlight since Hogan's off the wood on Barrett. So, like, I don't know.
But even more so now. Like, because there seems like even there was a couple of nasty ones in the Kilkenny and Clare minor semi-final. Really nasty.
There's a good question.
P174. Who's more likely to defend their All-Ireland, Limerick or Kerry? Limerick, definitely.
Even at this stage, and considering they're on the ropes, but I suppose, well, both teams, their destinies in their own hand.
Yeah, you can't ask. You kind of can't ask for more than that. I just think if Limerick can get through Munster, that things will probably open up for them. Whereas I haven't seen anything much different with Kerry this year. If anything, like, it's one thing if you don't see anything different and there's no slippage, but it definitely looks like there's slippage compared to last year. Now, saying that was the first competitive game really since the league, so they're bound to improve forward. But that was Mayo's first competitive game in 6 weeks, so like, do the math on that one. I don't really know what to read on it, to be honest with you. But it does, maybe it's becoming more obvious that, if Clifford is kept in any way quiet, and he still got plenty of scores the other day, that you have a generational player here in a good team, but maybe not a great team.
Yeah, he's dragging them up. Just in terms of Galway scores against Tyrone, Shane Walsh hit 4 frees and 2 from play, as did Killian McDade, Paul Conroy and Peter Cook. A few other lads pitched in with a point. Darren McCurry scored a couple from play and 5 frees. Derek Hanavan, he scored a couple of frees, and then a few other players with a point each, but not that much scoring from play from Tyrone. For Kerry, David Clifford, 8 points, 5 of those from play. Gainey with 3. Sean O'Shea was pretty quiet. Thomas Sullivan came up to hit a couple of points. Ryan O'Donoghue scored 5. James Carr scored 3. Aidan O'Shea. Like, I think Aidan O'Shea looks like a player who's really worked on his kicking, like in terms of his shooting. Because it is something where, he was thrown in full forward over the last couple of years. There was that All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin a couple of years back. He missed one from 14 yards out. He's had criticism for it over the years. But I'm happy to see him going well on the frees. I'd like to see him, it's unusual to see him on the frees. But I'm pleased for him personally that he's going well on them.
Yeah, I think he's probably the most maligned player in the country. And I don't know if it's because he's so big that he's just a target for criticism or whatever. But I think Kevin McStay has probably come in and they've probably talked to him, even the coaching wise, and said, like, we want you kicking the ball a bit more. We want you to be confident enough to kick the ball. And we're going to give you responsibility of frees on the right hand side because we don't have a left footed free taker. And it seems like whereas a lot of people probably thought that he might be edged out the door, if anything, it's the exact opposite. He's been edged back into front and centre, hasn't he, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So Donegal, they beat Clare, and Donegal have had a tough season. Obviously, Paddy Carr came in as manager after Declan Botter, but he's already gone. Clare were winning 6-3 at half time. Can you imagine the mood of the locals in Donegal when they're 6-3 down at half time and staring down the barrel of a gun of defeat here?
Yeah, I was watching GA Go the other day. Michael Murphy was doing, analysis or whatever, and you could just see his change in demeanour from when they were chatting him at halftime compared to when they were chatting him at full time. Because when the wheels are falling off, they usually just keep falling off at pace, and things just, descend rapidly and get, rapidly worse. For them to be able to put the hand up and stop this, deny Clare only scored 3 points, I think, in the second half. Big kudos to Donegal, but from a Clare point of view, they were in, they had this match within their grasp, shall we say. It wasn't ever going to be a high scoring game, and Colin Collins called it a capitulation in the second half. He just said, it was very disappointing. We felt we played very well and didn't get the game and didn't win the game. Okay, fair enough, but that was a very disappointing capitulation in the second half. We dominated the first half and the scoreboard didn't reflect how much we dominated it, and that came home to roost in the second half when Donegal dominated. Yeah, just the result was kind of there for them, and they didn't take it. And as Colin says, when you capitulate against a team, even of that quality, even if they are struggling, a Division 1 team will take advantage of it.
So Sligo against Kildare finished 14 points apiece. Now, do you look at it and think, right, Kildare have been very up and down in recent times. Sligo obviously coming from a fairly low base in terms of league, but they did get to a Connacht final, albeit beating teams that are fairly lowly ranked to get there. But I would imagine I'd be fairly disgusted if I was in the Kildare ranks or a Kildare supporter, seeing that you can't put away a team that's, a bit further down the totem pole.
Yeah, it's not that surprising though, is it? Based on some of the abysmal Division 2 performances, and yet they got it up for who'd they beat? Who'd they beat in the Leinster quarter final? I'm just trying to think. They beat Wicklow in the Leinster quarter final, and then got really up for playing Dublin in the semi final, and have shown their ability to get up for a one-off game, but to not be able to back it up against Sligo here, like that leaves them in really, really ropey ground now. It's probably going to come down to score difference between the two of them for who gets third, realistically, because you probably couldn't see either of them winning a game outside of that. But with Kildare, maybe they'll get up for another game and cause a shock. But from a Sligo point of view, I know there was 3 matchups up on the OurGame website, and one of them was Niall Murphy against Mick O'Grady. And I'm not 100% sure if they picked each other up, but Niall Murphy had a game-winning influence for Sligo. Kick 6, 2 from frees, and Sean Carabine with 4 as well. It's a huge result for Sligo, built on the back of the under-20s getting to an All-Ireland final and win a Connacht, and the seniors getting to a Connacht final and winning Division 4 as well. So I think they obviously have their ship in order there.
Yeah, I mean, what a boost it would be for the county if they can have this underage success, and then you have the senior team, sort of the flagship team, inspiring the youth to decide, okay, let's keep this going if they get out of group. But for Kildare, I mean, the amount of quality they have, like talented footballers, big units, runners, for them to be drawn with a team that's, that they should be beaten, I just think that must be very frustrating. The Tailteann Cup, then I'll just go through some of the results there. Down came down to Semple Stadium and really bossed Tipperary. That was 2-18 to 6 points. That was never really in doubt from early on in that game. Then Laois and Offaly drew 1-11 apiece. I think Laois left a 6-point lead behind them in that game.
Yeah, Martin Murphy said that Offaly got the tactics wrong and were essentially blessed to get a result. And I know Billy Sheehan was bowling with how they basically spurned a 6-point lead at the end. So I think we're happy enough to get out of there with a point without a doubt.
Yeah, Meath 3-17, Waterford 1-14.
1-9 to 4, 1-4 to 9 at half time in that game. And you're kind of thinking, like, Meath kind of got back on tracks in the first game of the Tailteann Cup, but she's beaten Waterford by 9 points and conceding 1-14 wouldn't exactly be inspiring confidence now, would it?
No, absolutely not. Especially when, it's been very difficult for Effie Fitzgerald to even get players to line out for the county. And then Fermanagh 1-19, Leitrim 2-7. Fairly clinical for Fermanagh, who outplayed Leitrim for much of this. And then Longford 3-17, Wicklow 2-9. So Paddy Christie will be delighted to get that.
That leaves Wicklow out now as well. They've lost their 2 games, so they're essentially gone out of competition, having spurned that lead against Carlow the first week.
Yeah, PWL 74 is referenced in the Laois Offaly draw. A draw between the Kings County and the Queen's County.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You're going back old school there, PWL. Yeah,
Limerick 119, Carlow 14 points. So Limerick, that's a couple of wins in a row, so they're going well. Antrim 215, Wexford 14, Cavan 18 points, London 212. Like, at times Cavan have been quite impressive over the last couple of years. I thought they'd actually win that game by a little bit more.
Yeah, probably. It's 18 scores to 8, in fairness. The 2 goals, take the goals off it, and it's probably a double-digit victory. But, Shano, it's coming towards that time of the week, and I wonder whether you're prepared. But my goat of the week, in hurling terms anyway, is Niall Mitchell. He missed between 16 and 18 weeks after getting surgery. He came on and got 2 absolutely outrageous goals after making fetches in the square. And do you know what else he did? I think it was Peter Clark delivered the ball in, and Mitchell was flirting with being in the square and consciously moved out of the square and then came back into the square just as the ball was arriving. I thought that was brilliant. So he's my hurling goat of the week anyway, and my football goat of the week, even though he didn't get man of the match in GA goal, was Matty Rowan. Thought he was unbelievable for Mayo the other day. Probably could have had another couple of scores and maybe potentially could have had a goal, but thought he delivered a brilliant performance for Mayo as they upset Kerry.
Yeah, goat of the week for me, I'd say Cathal Barrett. I thought he was excellent. By the way, there's another little point I want to get back to. So I'm going to give it to Cathal Barrett, and in the football, I'm going to give it to, I don't know.
Big Aidan O'Shea?
I'm going to give it to Aidan O'Shea. Why not? I'll go with that. There's a couple of other things that I wanted to touch on as well, just before we finished off. Number one was, I think Darragh Egan it was a bit of a gamble to drop Conor McDonald the previous day. And when he came on against Dublin, I thought he had a very good performance. He scored 2-2 yesterday. I don't know if that's like not being able to get a too much of a tune out of Kevin Foley, but maybe that's down to Kevin Foley. I don't know if you can always lay that at the manager's door. But I think we're seeing again, our team's getting a bounce for bringing in big name rugby players as performance coaches. So you've had Gordon Darcy with Wexford, you've had Donnacha O'Callaghan with Waterford. Have they got a bounce from them? Did Cork get a big bounce from having what's his name, Dougie Howlett?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's so immeasurable. Like, how do you measure the relevance of having these lads in? I just don't see the value of it. And like, are there not people within the GA that can do the performance? If you feel you need a performance coach, do you really need to go for a big name outside? Can you not just find someone within GA who also understands and knows the game inside out?
Yeah, as I say, we've probably seen more and more of this kind of happening. I know John Myler spoke very positively of Doug Howlett during his time in Cork. I suppose when the results don't go counties' ways, you're going to look a little bit deeper. I think Billy Walsh was involved with Wexford as well. Just something I couldn't believe with Wexford against Westmeath, and this is with due respect to Westmeath, but Wexford let them have the puck out nearly all of the time. And I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe like Wexford should be a step ahead of Westmeath, and yet they're allowing them have the puck out, and kind of I couldn't get my head around that. And they've given away their puck out in nearly the vast majority of games they played this year, which I just find very, very strange. None of the top teams, I'll put it to you this way, are really doing that when push comes to shove. Like, was there many sharp puck outs in Tip and Limerick yesterday? Not where you're actually letting them have the ball, if you know what I mean.
There's a bit of it, like there's a mix of it. There are a team, like I think Limerick have traditionally sat off teams, that they're happy to keep a shape and sort of like a soft zonal setup whereby we're marking lads but not so tight that we're going to be pulled out of shape to some degree. So I think, because I can remember several times when Michael Breen was able to walk the ball out from the back and then just lamp it upfield or whatever. I do think there's a balance on that. I wouldn't be someone who's saying you have to squeeze up on all the puck outs, because look what happened to Limerick and Kilkenny in the final last year.
Just quickly on that as well, I thought Tip's restarts were unbelievably fast, like so fast, and would not refuse to allow Limerick to get set up for their puck out. I thought that was really, really good. Whether I don't know if there was a ball by there throwing out balls, or whether Shelley just had a ball, the little tennis hook at the back or whatever, but the restarts were so quick and it upset Limerick, and it didn't allow them to get set up like they normally would.
Yeah, Padraig O'Malley says, great show, lads. Okay, complete sideshow. Shane, dead right to call it out. Biggest look at me thing ever. I think he's talking about the rugby players being involved, or former rugby players coming in as performance coaches. That's about the height of it. Don't forget that we're brought to you by OurGameRetro.com. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. Also, if you want us to run fundraisers for you, email events@ourgame.ie, and also go to ourstore.ie if you want to get some of our official merchandise. That's it for the show this week. We'll chat to you again. Michael, chat to you on Thursday.
See you, Shane.